Okay. We're live now.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Islip February 9th Planning Board meeting. If you're just joining us and you're here to speak, can you please use your Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to let us know which application you're here to speak on, if you're the applicant or a member of the community. We remind applicants to keep their presentations to no more than 30 minutes and members of the community to keep their comments to 3 minutes. We're going to go to the first item on the agenda. Actually, before we do that, let's just do a roll call on who's here. I know that Mr. Bruno, Mr. Fujari said they are unable to make it this evening. Mr. Brown?
Present.
Ms. Cruz?
Present.
Mr. Matamore? Mr. Moriarty?
Present.
Thank you. Barbara, can you hear everybody clearly?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, first item on the agenda. Planning Board application public hearing, Venture One Real Estate LLC, PB 2021-036, north side of Veterans Memorial Highway, State Route 454, approximately 927.44 feet east of Fifth Avenue, Ronkonkoma, 0 Veterans Memorial Highway. Applicant requests a Planning Board special permit for a warehouse in the Industrial Corridor District pursuant to 68-466.1B. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant, and I note for the record, Mr. Matamore has joined the meeting.
Good evening. Garrett Gray, Weber Law Group, for the applicant. You may recall this hearing was held at the last planning board meeting. The only reason that it didn't fully close and a vote taken was because there was an incorrect notice on the town's website, which was since corrected. We had remailed and reposted for tonight's hearing. The hearing is basically closed. It was left open for written comment until tonight. I was advised no such comments were received. If there are any, we're happy to address them. Other than that, you have our whole presentation.
Thank you. If there's no objection from the board, I'd like to make the minutes from the last meeting part of this evening's minutes.
No objection.
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there anyone here who has joined the meeting that wishes to be heard on this application? I do not see anybody listed. Not seeing anyone, I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr.
There she
Chairman. The subject property located on the north side of Vets Highway in Ronkonkoma is currently vacant and surrounded by industrial and office uses. The applicant is looking to develop the property with a 75,000 square foot warehouse. The proposed site plan meets the required parking, but an overall landscaping relaxation is required. However, the site plan does show significant landscaping in front of the loading dock area to screen it from view. The only variance that will be required will be for the front yard setback because of an irregularity in the parcel shape. Everywhere else, the building meets the required front yard setback. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which also includes permission to land bank 10% of the parking stalls.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. Any questions for the applicant or Ms. Wozniak? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Brown.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, based on our last meeting in the report and the presentation that was done by the applicant and Ms. Wozniak's staff report, I make a motion to grant the application.
Motion by Mr. Brown to grant the application subject to the conditions.
Subject to the conditions.
Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you. Thank you for coming back, Mr. Gray.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening. Item 2 on the agenda, Planning Board application, public hearing, New Tech Auto Collision, Mario Baganini, PB 2022-002, west side of Ocean Avenue, 850.30 feet south of Veterans Memorial Highway, State Route 454, Bohemia, 1568 Ocean Avenue. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for a vehicle repair shop in the Industrial 1 District pursuant to 68-340.1B. Site plan modification may also be requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
How
Good
you
evening,
doing?
Hello, Mario. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Tom Walsh, architect, offices at 700 Veterans Memorial Highway in Hauppauge. I'm going to do the presentation for New Tech Auto.
Go right ahead.
Okay, as described, New Tech Auto is occupying 2 of the 10 spaces at 1566 / 1568 Ocean Avenue for a total of 3,500 square feet. They use the larger of the 2, unit number 2, as their physical repair facility, and the smaller of the 2 units for their refinishing paint shop. It's pretty straightforward. Aside from that, obviously, we're before the board for the standard special permit. Both the applicant and the property owner have been I've sent copies of the conditions that I received from Kelly earlier today, and they are both under consideration, and I expect to have signed copies of those ready by probably the end of the week.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll go to public comment and the staff report, and we'll come back for questions.
Certainly.
Thank you. I do not see anyone signed up to speak on this application. Did anyone join us who now wishes to be heard? Please raise your hand. Not seeing anyone raising their hand, I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located on the west side of Ocean Avenue, approximately 815 feet south of Vets Highway in Bohemia, and it's surrounded by industrial development. The property is currently improved with the 28,000 square foot multi-tenant industrial building originally constructed in 1986. Tonight, the applicant is looking to obtain a planning board special permit for a vehicle repair use for a 3,500 square foot tenant space located within the existing building. The site is in general good condition. However, most of the tenants don't have certificates of occupancy, and there seems to be some unpermitted outdoor storage in the rear of the property. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which requires the owner to submit change of use tenant applications for the existing tenant spaces and requires the rear portion of the property to be landscaped.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. Mr. Walsh, you think the applicant is okay with the covenants and restrictions as stated by Ms. Wozniak?
Yes, that's correct. As a matter of fact, we have made application for CFCs for both. They actually come as 2 separate COs for one side for 1568 and the other side for 1566. New Tech's special permit requirement came up as one of the conditions that needed to be met prior to them granting the CFC application. And like I said earlier, the property owner has been made aware of the planning department's requirements in terms of housekeeping and landscaping around the property.
And the applicant is, not the applicant, the owner of the property is aware of the other approvals? that are
Yes,
needed?
sir. Yes. Yes, New Tech is aware of their conditions and the property owner is aware of theirs. Yes.
Right. Yeah. I'm not as concerned with New Tech. I'm just want to have a concern with obviously the property owner.
I totally understand that.
Okay, so as long as they're aware of those conditions,
Yes, sir.
I'm okay. From my perspective, let the other board members speak as well, but with the fact that we go ahead subject to the covenants and restrictions, obviously there may be some open violations. If not, there will soon be some open violations if they do not
Obviously.
go ahead and get those taken care of. Mr. Brown, do you have a question?
Oh, with the landscaping in the back, that's going to get all the vehicles removed?
Yes, there's an encroachment on a property that's coming off of Sycamore Avenue. A commonly owned property from the property owner. They are aware that encroachment's been there. Obviously, the conditions for this property have reinforced the fact that matter must be addressed. So by claiming the property back, obviously that should remove, obviously, the encroachment onto the property.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any further questions for the applicant? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Moriarty.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions, and also conditioned upon, ensuring that the owner undertakes his responsibilities with respect to the CNRs as well.
Thank you. So there's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions, also noting that the owner of the property as well must take notice of the covenants and restrictions. I think that was a second by Mr. Matamore. Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Item 3 on the agenda, Town Board application, public hearing, Bohemia Chicken LLC, CZ 2021-025, north side of Sunrise Highway, State Route 27, 4525 Sunrise Highway, Bohemia. Applicant requests a change of zone from Business 2 District to Business 3 District. A Town Board special permit for a fast food restaurant pursuant to 68-302G, and a Planning Board special permit for a convenience market pursuant to 301.2D. Site plan modifications may be required as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant. The applicant is ready. Just go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Friedland and members of the board and staff, Doug Hines, Design Development Group, Stony Brook, New York, for the applicant. It's good to see you all, even if at a distance. Applicant seeks a recommendation to the town board for a change of zone to Business 3 with a special permit for the drive-through feature of a proposed Popeyes restaurant. Also appearing with me this evening and intending to speak briefly are John Breslin, attorney and real estate expert, as well as Wayne Muller, our traffic engineer, both well known to this board. Wayne's traffic report has already been reviewed by the town's outside traffic consultant, and John's report has been submitted to the town. I know the board is familiar with this area and has heard applications over the years, but as you consider what may be best and most feasible for the productive use of this vacant commercial site, I would like to point out in particular two salient and compelling features of the zoning and land use in the immediate area. First, as to the zoning, this stretch of Sunrise Highway features business zoning on both sides of the highway, including the B3 zoning for the Starbucks drive-through 475 feet to the east of the property, and the automotive and commercial uses 400 feet to our west, as well as various B2 zone sites in between, including, of course, the subject site. A similar pattern exists across the highway, also featuring a McDonald's with drive-through next to a 7-Eleven store. As to the permitted uses as of right on the site, the town previously approved a change of zone to Business 2 and a special permit for the 7-Eleven convenience store, at which time the proposed use of the eastern portion of the site was a 12,000 square foot retail center with potential tenants, including, of course, retail stores, personal service establishments, and restaurants. That leads me to the second salient feature of this immediate area, which is the retail shopping center just across the side street from our site on the west side. This is a 17,000 square foot neighborhood strip center, which for many years now has had far more vacancies than occupied units and is currently at least half vacant. It serves as a telling reminder that brick and mortar has been withering on the vine for years now, and the pandemic has, of course, accelerated that decline. Conversely, the same business and social factors have exponentially increased the demand for drive-through food establishments, which themselves often take the place of drive-through banking facilities, as that industry too is more and more reliant upon online services. My planning point is that this site could host a bank as of right and many other uses as of right, but we all know the Capital One branch closed there years ago and the 7-Eleven took its place. And as the trend towards remote online services continues, the chances of getting a bank at this location are slim to none. And many of the permitted uses in the Business 3 zone, Business 2 zone are simply not flourishing, not only here, but throughout the town and the counties. The planning challenge, therefore, is to consider what's viable for this site, now vacant for over 5 years, and determine what reasonable provision can be made to buffer the use, the proposed use, from the 2 or 3 adjacent neighbors most likely to be affected. In brief, therefore, we propose a modest 2,145 square foot, 1-story restaurant with a drive-through feature. Parking for the combined uses, including the 7-Eleven, exceeds code requirements. 48 required, 67 provided, including 3 which are land banked. The queuing lane easily meets the town's requirement of 12 vehicles. The proposed building itself is 105 feet from the property line of the nearest residential neighbor to the north. The drive-through lane at its northernmost point is 62 feet from the same neighbor. And with that rarely used but required escape lane, the buffer is reduced to 50 feet. The overall site currently features a 6-foot opaque fence between the residential and commercial properties, as well as dozens of evergreen trees, bushes, and 34 deciduous trees planted in a sawtooth pattern across the northern portion of the site, with a similar planting pattern along the eastern border of the site, all of that done in accordance with your 2018 change of zone approval. As you can see on the site plan, we propose a superior and dense landscaping treatment on the 3 interior sides of our structure and paving that effectively blocks the view and attenuates any sounds from the restaurant operation. We also propose a superior landscaping treatment on the Sunrise Highway frontage. The hours of operation are from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m., 6 days a week, and typically a somewhat earlier closing on Sunday evening. At peak lunch and dinner hours, we will have 6+ employees, and with the lion's share of our business being drive-through, there's really never a time when the site circulation would be other than optimal. The restaurant operation will generate approximately 30 full-time and 20 part-time positions, with an emphasis on hiring from the neighborhood. The covenants and restrictions agreed to at the time of the convenience store approval effectively and thoroughly regulate the use and maintenance of the site, and among other things, require trucks to enter and leave the overall site by the Sunrise Highway Service Road main entrance, which will be shared by the 7-Eleven and our restaurant as we propose. We have no issue with the substance of the existing covenants and would welcome any further conditions or covenants deemed advisable or necessary by this board. That's the overview of our application. If there are no questions for me at this time, might I please call upon John Breslin to briefly summarize his findings, followed by Wayne Muller to do the same as to traffic impacts.
Please do.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Breslin. My business address is 44 Elm Street in Huntington. I was requested by the applicant to make a study with respect to the impacts on real property values. Mr. Hines gave a very in-depth description of the property and the neighborhood it's situated in. I'm not going to repeat that. Some of that is mentioned in my report, but the site is situated on the north side of Sunrise Highway. It's a state road with very, very significant traffic that goes through that area. This is the type of location where you would expect to find this type of use. It exists, this type of use exists as he described nearby on Sunrise Highway on both sides of the street. The site, it was set up in anticipation, if you will, of a commercial use on the site. It was designed with the buffers abutting the residential properties to the north. This particular design actually comes about to create additional buffering and screening to further mitigate any impacts on the residential properties to the north. One of the benefits of the development in later years is the idea of providing new site plan techniques that give the ability to mitigate impacts with respect to residential where it abuts commercial. The intrusion from the commercial to the residential was established some time ago, and this isn't going to change that. But with respect to these buffers and this use, it's something that one would expect. This use will not have any more of an adverse impact than what would be expected by the much larger shopping center. And I believe that the conditions that are created by these buffers will help to ensure mitigation. The other benefits with respect to the site design, and Mr. Muller will go into more detail, with the cross-access easement, it limits the movements on the streets and allows better flow of traffic through the property, which is better for both the consumers as well as the people in the neighborhood. So in conclusion, it's my opinion that by by recommending the rezoning for this use, you're not going to have an adverse impact on your property values. You're not going to alter or change the pattern of development along this stretch of the highway. And it's already a site that is set up for a business use of this nature. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, actually, good evening. Wayne Muller with the firm of Robinson and Muller Engineering. Our offices are located at 50 Elm Street, Huntington, New York. As Mr. Hines has indicated, we have prepared a traffic analysis of the proposed Popeyes restaurant, which was previously submitted to the town and dated November 1st, 2021. As indicated in my report, we used two different methodologies to estimate the quantity of traffic generated by the proposed Popeyes. The first method is via statistical information presented in the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual, which has numerous statistics relating to the operation of a fast food restaurant with a drive-through. And also indicated in my report, we performed observations at an existing Popeyes restaurant on Jericho Turnpike in Huntington that also contains indoor seating and a drive-through. As indicated in our report, we found that the observed trips were significantly lower than what the ITE would state for a Popeyes restaurant. However, our analysis utilized the more conservative methodology, which would be the Institute of Transportation Engineers statistics, in order to determine the relative impact of the traffic generated by this facility on the roadway network. Our report was reviewed by LKMA Associates, and some of the results of their review is summarized in their January 7th, 2022 memorandum to Mr. Colgan of the Planning Department. And as indicated in the McLean letter, they agreed with the methodology that we presented in our report, and that they concurred that the traffic generated by the project would not have a significant impact on the overall operations of the adjacent roadway system, and that they concur with our conclusions from what we found based on the traffic generated by the proposed Popeyes. McLean correctly indicates that this project, if it was to move forward, would have to receive approval from the New York State Department of Transportation. Since the plan before the board tonight is to share a common driveway with the existing 7-Eleven convenience market, I do not foresee any significant issues with the Department of Transportation as it relates to the traffic generated by the proposed Popeyes. As Mr. Hines has indicated, the combined sites provide parking on both properties well in excess of the code requirements. And as indicated on the plans that are before the board this evening, the drive-through queue provides 12 spaces. However, as indicated on the plan, in all likelihood, 14 cars could be provided within the drive-through lane without impinging on the flow of traffic in and out of the site. So therefore, based on the analyses that we performed, it is my professional opinion that the granting of this application, in order for it to move forward to the next step in the process, will not create any undue traffic congestion or hazard. Adequate parking provided on the, more than adequate parking provided on the property, and the queuing satisfies the town requirements. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Hines, in the presentation?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to public comment, to a staff report, then we'll come back for some questions.
Very well.
At this time, I'm going to ask for Susan Montefusco Rodriguez. Ms. Rodriguez, you're in the room. When you're ready, just unmute and go ahead and speak.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to say that with the 7-Eleven now being in operation since for the past couple of years, I do see a very heavy traffic impact I am opposed to having the Popeyes adjacent to my backyard without a proper attenuation wall that was put in, that was asked for, and we got a 6-foot fence instead. We have incurred the over debris of people throwing their garbage out as they come out of the parking lot and come onto Sycamore Avenue. As you well know, I am the first house after you come out of that parking lot on Sycamore Avenue, and I have picked up a very large amount of 7-Eleven products since the opening of it. The traffic is extensive. People come out of there with their foot heavily pedaled to, and they're flying down the road. I've been fighting for a light outside, as I have elderly parents that I walk out to when they leave my house after a function, and several times cars have come very close to everybody that I've tried to walk out in the dark. So I have several issues that are very, very concerning, and a 15-passenger drive-through in my backyard as I'm socializing on a weekend is not ideal. As you could probably imagine, if you were in my shoes, I'm also very, very concerned about the value of my property, and I've done major improvements, and I have major improvements that are scheduled within the next 60 to 90, 120 days. And that is a very big concern to me as well.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Are you looking for a street light to be placed on Sycamore Avenue in that area? Is that what you're asking for?
I'm actually looking for the light to be moved, and I have emailed the highway department several times throughout the years just to move the light from the T-Mobile to in front of my house on the pole where the transformer is. I'm not asking for the town to buy an additional light. I'm asking them to move a light.
Okay. If you would also just email that, whatever you have, to Mr. Colgan on that as well.
Yes.
In the planning department. Thank you.
I will.
And then are you seeing, just a clarification, garbage from the 7-Eleven being put out onto Sycamore Avenue or onto your property? Is that what you're saying?
I've had bottles, I've had 7-Eleven cups, food wrappers, other paraphernalia strewn across. I've had a very different subject matter on my lawn. As an end of it, their landscaper, when they're done cleaning up, blows their subsequent leftovers straight on. I'm standing out there. I said, please don't do that. They do it anyway. I called the landscaping company. He didn't even want to speak to me.
Okay. Thank you for that information. And thank you for speaking this evening.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask for Patrick Kiernan. Mr. Kiernan, you're in the room. When you're ready, just go ahead and speak.
Okay, I appreciate it. Susan, I'm sorry you're going through that. I think whoever goes there, in whatever case, you should probably get some lifetime supplies to whatever is there. My question really was for Mr. Miller on the traffic question there. I did agree with Mr. Hines. Obviously, I used to bank there. There's not going to be a bank there, anytime soon again. But we were comparing a Popeyes on Jericho Turnpike to Sunrise Highway. And, my question is, that's a service road area right there. So it's not, the 4 lanes or the 3 lanes we might have on Jericho Turnpike. So people are going to have to exit there, and then they're going to be congested there. I'm looking at this map right here. And so it looks like everybody's going to be directed into one area off the service road. Have we looked at expanding that area or trying to decongest that area? Because that's also, the Oakdale merge right there. Do you guys have any concerns about that making more traffic?
If you have any other questions, Mr. Kiernan, let's hear them all, and then I'll get Mr. Muller to answer, and as well as the staff to answer your questions on the traffic.
Yeah, I'll yield. I'll let anybody respond. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Okay. I do not show anyone else who wishes to be heard on this application. Is anybody who joined the room late who didn't sign up, please raise your hand. I see Edward Barbara. And if anybody else wishes to be heard, please hit the raise your hand function. We'll get you into the room. Mr. Barbara, go right ahead when you're ready.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. A couple of things is the the traffic study, was that just on Sunrise Highway, or did it encompass Sycamore Avenue as well?
I'll get you that answer. Go ahead.
I was involved with the 7-Eleven, and one of the concerns that I had was that the traffic on Sycamore Avenue was going to be greatly increased due to the fact that it's the main thoroughfare from Vets Highway to Sunrise Highway. And the truck route is supposed to go down to Lakeland Avenue and cut around, but the cars don't do that, neither do the trucks. And what that means is it's going, you know, there are a lot of speeding issues down Sycamore Avenue to begin with. Then you have an elementary school that is right down the block, that's about 500-600 feet down the road. I have some serious concerns about the kids, okay, coming out of school, for someone to go get their lunch, the 7-Eleven coffee, or even now Popeye's fast food chicken. So, and I also believe their initial plan was not to have one shared entrance for 7-Eleven as well as any retail store that was there. There was supposed to be a cutaway into Dunkin' Donuts parking lot as well. And I'm not sure if that's part of the program as well.
We'll speak about that also. Thank you for raising it. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this application this evening who was joined late or did not raise their hand yet? Please do so now. Not seeing anyone else, I'm going to go to Mr. Colgan for a report, and then we'll come back with the questions that were posed. Mr. Colgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This application proposes rezoning the site to Business 3 for a fast food restaurant in place of an approved retail shopping center. The rezoning to Business 2 district was approved back in 2016 to permit the convenience market on the west side of the site, which has been in operation since 2019. A nearly identical application for a fast food restaurant was applied for in 2018, but was withdrawn after the public hearing. The planning staff at that time did not support the application, given that the applicant was able to clean up the blighted conditions of the property with the Business District 2 designation, and because the covenants had recently been imposed. We further noted that the fast food restaurant uses along Sunrise Highway generally consisted of pad sites in front of larger shopping centers on significantly larger sites. This subject fast food restaurant would not be a pad site and would be adjacent to residential uses. A traffic study was submitted and reviewed by the town's traffic consultant. He recommended the two uses on the site share a single access from Sunrise Highway, which is now shown on the site plan. The consultant also agreed that the project would not have a significant impact on the overall operations on Sunrise Highway. But the conceptual site plan shows an approximate 34-foot wide planted buffer from the fence line and meets the minimum parking requirements for both of the uses. The board will have to weigh the changing market conditions from 2016, when this property was approved for redevelopment, with the additional impacts that would arise from a fast food use over the previously approved approximately 13,000 square foot shopping center. But based on that, the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision to review comments heard tonight and to go over them with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Colgan. Mr. Colgan, either for you or for the applicant, can you speak first the possibility, if this were to be approved of, or even if it's not approved, to having that traffic light move from the T-Mobile side of the street to the other side of the street? And whose jurisdiction that would be under?
Oh, to be under the jurisdiction of the state, so I'm not certain where that would go. Certainly, Ms. Rodriguez can forward that email over to me, and I can address with our traffic safety to see if we have any jurisdiction or input on that whatsoever. But my guess would be all New York State DOT's opinion.
Okay, so we'll get that information. I asked her to send that information over to you. Mr. Hines, in terms of the landscaping, I guess maybe some other conditions on the overall, if this were to be approved on the overall site in terms of how they're cleaning things up and how they're completing their landscaping responsibilities would be something that would be okay with you?
Absolutely. And further to that point, Mr. Chairman, I had the opportunity to review comments that Ms. Rodriguez made to the town several days ago. I've had several cordial and productive conversations with her since then. And considering her proximity to commercial property, she's a pretty reasonable person, and we're looking forward to resolving some of her issues. I've been reaching out through the ownership of the property to obtain a high-level 7-Eleven contact rather than just a store manager that she can appeal to off hours. Some of her concerns had to do with people in the parking lot at night and so forth. And we provided some contact information today with the property owner who has a good relationship with the 7-Eleven corporate folks. And we're going to get her a 24/7 contact she can use, or her husband can use if needed. The light that Ms. Rodriguez is talking about relocating is a street light, not a traffic signal. There are 2 street lights, one closer to Sunrise Service Road, one probably another 80 feet in. And then there's a utility pole across the street from her home, which could accommodate either a 3rd light or a moved light. We've reached out to the highway department, and now at this point, Tanner Gonzalez and Sean can follow up on it to see if they'd be, what the procedure would be to get that accomplished. As to my worthy colleague Sean's comment about the nearly identical application having been withdrawn, I would just point out respectfully that the Taco Bell building was proposed at 88 feet from the neighbor's property line. The Popeyes building is proposed at 105 feet away. The Taco Bell queue was proposed to be 54 feet from the property line. We're proposing 62 feet for the queuing lane. There'll be a largely vacant escape lane, so to speak, another 12 feet closer. So roughly equivalent, but still an improvement. Most significantly, however, the difference between a Taco Bell and a Popeyes, other than the menu, is hours of operation. The Islip Bayshore Taco Bell, for instance, is open from 7 a.m. till 3 a.m. We're proposing 10:30 to 11:30 and an earlier closing on Sundays. It's been pointed out in response to Mr. Barber's question that it was the town consultant that proposed the single entrance. Wayne can add to this if need be, and the DOT would probably prefer it that way as well.
But you also have a cross access to the Dunkin' Donuts. Has that been arranged?
A future cross access has been proposed, and we're agreeable to doing that. It happens that I represent that Dunkin' Donuts owner at other locations. I've spoken to them about it, and they're looking forward to that possibility.
So as a condition of this, if it were to be approved, that would be an okay?
Yes, it would.
Condition. Okay. And just a question you brought up, I want to commend the applicant for moving the business further from the property line, as you just stated. But as Ms. Rodriguez raised, I'm not sure if there's a type of fencing or a type of plantings that would actually be better to put in there. Maybe this is Mr. Colgan, that would help with sound attenuation. I mean, I know it's on Sunrise Highway, so you get the sound anywhere the car is driving by. But I guess as it gets later in the evening, when maybe it's not as busy with traffic, is there something else planting wise or fencing wise that would deal with some of the sounds, since we'll now have cars back there waiting in a queue and people talking and whatever else have you? Again, there's going to be a high decibel level from the highway itself. So I'm not sure the additional noise, but is there something else planting wise or fencing wise that works better than what is proposed, or do we have the best proposed? That's either from Mr. Colgan or from Mr. Hines.
We can discuss with the town engineer. I don't know if there's room for additional plantings. There's certainly other sound attenuating materials or a taller wall or fence that we could entertain. But that'd be one of the things we would go over with the applicant after this hearing.
Okay. Mr. Hines, you're okay with having discussions regarding that?
We certainly are. We've given some consideration to it and have some ideas as well. So we look forward to that conversation.
Thank you. And my other question is, in terms of the traffic, was there a study prior to the 7-Eleven done regarding Sycamore Avenue and one with the proposed addition of the fast food restaurant? And is there a difference, or what is the difference between prior to 7-Eleven and where we're at now with obviously 7-Eleven? What has been the increase, as well as what is the expected increase with the fast food?
Well, again, Wayne Muller for the record. I did not review the study prior to 7-Eleven. However, we did, as part of our analysis, we did estimate the quantity. We actually counted the driveway to the 7-Eleven that exists. We counted Sycamore Avenue, and upon reviewing the volumes that were on the service road associated with those two uses, the activity there is relatively low when compared to other locations. And the reason for that, is that Sunrise Highway Service Road in this area is one way in the westbound direction. So we're really only capturing the volume in one direction, whereas in other locations within the town of Islip and on Long Island, a lot of these facilities are located on two-way roadways where we'd have volume coming in both directions. So I didn't, based on the data that we collected, we did not see anything that would be abnormal as it relates to traffic volumes. In addition, our analysis of the intersections with and without the traffic generated by the proposed Popeyes, using, again, as I indicated earlier, an extremely conservative estimate of the traffic, we found that there would be no significant change to traffic conditions in and around this area. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but L.K. McLean Associates, who performs a very detailed review of these analyses when they're submitted to them, agreed with the findings of our report. And they would put us through our paces if they felt that it was warranted, without a doubt.
Yep, thank you. I mean, if there's a way to provide to the board members prior to this coming back, what the increase was prior to, if we have the study prior to the 7-Eleven, post 7-Eleven, what you've done in the more recent traffic analysis, would be interesting just to know to see if what was said at the first hearing is actually borne out or not.
Yeah, I'll have separate discussions with Mr. Colgan, and if that data is available, we will be more than willing to summarize it in a logical fashion and then resubmit it to the board for their review.
Thank you. I just have a question, Mr. Colgan. In terms of the latest with more people using drive-throughs, are we comfortable with the size of the queue right now as proposed?
I mean, the traffic consultant didn't raise any concerns over that. It certainly does appear that if it does fail, it would fail on site. We don't have a lot of experience with the Popeyes drive-throughs. We're more familiar with the Taco Bells and the Starbucks. But I think at this point, I don't think there's any glaring concerns over the proposed queuing, particularly when it's coupled with the bypass lane, which the applicant is able to provide.
And then my other question, Mr. Colgan, is, and I guess I got this from you, Mr. Hines, raising this regarding Ms. Rodriguez. If there were is there a loitering problem there? And if so, do we have the standard condition in covenants and restrictions regarding loitering?
I don't have the covenants in front of me. I'm certain the loitering covenant that the board typically imposes on just about all changes of zones is on that 7-Eleven property. And if it's not, it certainly would be proposed on any future set of covenants if this application.
If we do have it there, we should send someone out or make Ms. Rodriguez aware of who she can contact on our end if there is a violation of that. If not, let's say get that covenant added in, and hopefully then Mr. Hines can ever present it to his landlord, who then could present to 7-Eleven nationally, so they know. I mean, 7-Eleven generally, the new ones have been very good about loitering and cameras and the rest. So just to make them aware of that, I know with the newer buildings that have gone up, they've been very good about that. So maybe a way to get that addressed. Mr. Hines.
To those points, Mr. Friedland, briefly, I'm advised that 7-Eleven and Wayne Muller has, John Breslin has a lot of experience with them over the years. They are very keen on avoiding these kinds of problems, and I regret the occasional problems that the Rodriguezes have had. Of course, Mr. Muller and I have also talked about the type of queuing activity to expect at a Popeyes. We have many of them we worked on together across Long Island and elsewhere. I am advised that on the totem pole of queuing lanes, Popeyes is relatively low, certainly compared to Starbucks and Taco Bell. So it's one of the less intensive queuing operations, if I'm quoting Wayne properly.
And to the point of queuing, Mr. Colgan, if this is approved as is, and this doesn't work out, do they have the immediate ability to put a Starbucks in there, or can that be restricted out? Because obviously that queuing, as we know, is much different.
Yeah, that's something we should probably discuss with the applicant and even the town's traffic consultant. That will have a comparable, well, not a comparable, but it'll have different traffic patterns, particularly with regards to the drive-through. Starbucks will generally be busier in the morning. So if that's a predominant concern, particularly coupled with the 7-Eleven, which also has morning peak, and probably the Dunkin' Donuts as well, it might make sense to restrict this to not be a coffee shop. But we'll talk about that with the applicant.
Great. And then I know the answer to this, and I know, but for those members of the community here, Mr. Hines, maybe you can speak to this, or someone in your team can, just in terms of where the drive-through is, where the speaker is, the decibel level and the rest. I know you have significant distance. I know the decibel levels are not that high on that, but just to, if you can explain that, or someone there can explain that on your team.
Only because I don't have an immediate grasp on the answer. I'm going to defer to Wayne if he does, in terms of location of the ordering.
I guess if Mr. Colgan, if you wouldn't mind putting the site plan back up on the screen, that would be great.
While Mr. Colgan's getting that up, Mr. Hines, I just want to also bring up, you mentioned that the trucks from Sunrise entering and exiting through Sunrise Highway, you'll covenant that as well?
Yeah, the existing covenants and restrictions require all truck activity to enter and leave the same center location on the service road, and we're fine with that.
Great.
I'm not sure why my computer's not allowing me to share. If
Let
Kelly,
me try. Sean, let me try. I might be able to do it. Hold on. I thought I had the site plan open. Bear with me. No, I'm not getting it. Wayne, can you pull it up?
I cannot.
It was just up there. Who had it up originally? Was that Sean?
Come on, all these engineers and we can't get a picture on a computer. Come on.
Anyone from our IT staff still on that could provide assistance?
Yes, I'm looking into it now. I'm not quite sure why that would be happening.
Mr. Matamore, you're muted.
Am I muted?
No, Mr. Matamore is. Yeah, Mr. Matamore.
I was, thank you. I have two observations. I travel that.
Oh, someone started screen sharing. Okay.
Mr. Matamore, give me 1 second, Mr. Matamore. Let me go back to that one question to get it answered, and then we'll come right back to you, okay?
What changed? What happened?
So I think to hear while you pulled up the plan, maybe you could just run through where the drive-through speaker and everything is on the plan.
This is Tahir Qureshi. He's the engineer who developed the site plan. And I suspect he's got to unmute his microphone or his video in order to speak with us.
Yes. Okay, so I think you are able to see the site plan, the color rendering. There are two menu boards. They are on the left side, I believe. So the distance wise, you can add another 24 feet to the setback of the roadway, which Mr. Hines told, and I really don't see what that number is, but it's going to be additional 24 feet added into that setback. So it'll be additional 24 feet away from the residential property line.
Here, the question is, where is the ordering station, which would have an audible system?
Yes, those are the two menu boards, right where the blue car and the red car is.
Right.
If you look on the south side of those two cars, you will see the new preview board and new menu board.
What is the distance then from the property line, Mr. Hines, if you know from what you explained earlier on the application? And then the question is, does anybody know the decibel level, just to explain what that means?
Be 74 feet, because the distance to the queuing lane was 62. If we eliminate the queuing lane, which is 12 feet wide, we've added 12 feet to that 62. So it's 74 feet. I don't have the decibel level. We can provide that to staff, but I know they've gotten very sophisticated. They adjust according to ambient sound levels. So obviously the less noise in the area, the lower they get. That's my understanding, but we'll give that information to the staff.
Thank you. And Mr. Matamore, I'm going to go to you. You got a question?
Thank you. I have a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. I drive this area regularly, and I often go eastbound and get off at Oakdale Bohemia Road, and there's a cutoff that goes from Oakdale Bohemia Road, which is well signalized off Sunrise. to right by the school, where there's a light that you pick up Sycamore to go up to Vets Highway. I have to go up that way to the court or other businesses regularly. And so the traffic that's going to eventually cut through up to Vets will not go by Mrs. Rodriguez. I'm very sympathetic to Mrs. Rodriguez's concerns, but it's just an observation that people going eastbound and then are going to go to Vets to go to the 5th District Court will not go by her site. She does bring up, and we've seen before many times when there's fast foods involved, a specific covenant, which perhaps Sean and group can consider, about her complaint about paper that's actually coming from the 7-Eleven at the moment. And because we'd be adding a fast food component nearby, I would like staff to certainly see if we can improve Mrs. Rodriguez's quality of life by seeing if a covenant like, and Mr. Hines is very good at negotiating such things. I hope he's very skillful at what he does, that may make her life a lot better. And hopefully we can improve as much as we can the quality of life with regard to Mrs. Rodriguez. I too banked at that bank for many years, and so I'm very familiar with it. But the point that Mr. Muller made is significant, that if I come down Sycamore to go westbound, and you can do that, you can also take, I forget the name of the street, but Pond Road is maybe a faster way. But if people get down to go westbound, they don't go all the way down to Sunrise past Mrs. Rodriguez. They generally, as I would, bear off on Oakdale Bohemia Road, go up to that intersection and go right to go west. So it's a consideration, and Mr. Muller has touched on it, but I use it all the time, and I think there's some truth to it, of course. And just as an overview, because this is a 7-Eleven because this is a fast food operation, we're certainly sensitive to the fact that if not properly covenanted and controlled, that they can wreak havoc on neighbors if they are inconsiderate. Mr. Hines has already addressed a lot of that, and I feel comfortable that that would be taken care of. But certainly, we know that staff is going to recommend that we reserve to look into all these things, and I think that's the way this should go. And if that's properly addressed, then perhaps the application can move forward to a grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matamore. One of the things, Mr. Hines and Mr. Colgan, I'll just point out that I'm never a fan of is the location of the dumpster closest to the residential area. So if something can be done, moving that dumpster, I know the ones for 7-Eleven are further away. The one here, while it's not inside the buffer, it's as close as possible it is to the buffer that it could be when it possibly be relocated somewhere else, either closer to the establishment or closer to the other commercial properties on the east side.
Yeah, we have actually given thought to that. John Breslin raised that issue and we've discussed it. It appears that we can move it to the area of the loading zone, which is along the northern side of the parking lot, which would take it a considerable distance further away. There are other areas on the site, for instance, the southeast corner where we could put it, but it makes it very inconvenient for the employees. So we're going to balance those interests and see if we can come up with a better location.
Great. Well, my main interest here is that the neighbors not have a dumpster that's going to have food and other items in it that's close to their property line, what that does. So maybe
Yes,
a
sir.
slight inconvenience for the employees, but I would take the inconvenience of the employees as not as paramount as the inconvenience to the neighbors who live there on a regular basis. That being said, Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was one of the ones that I wasn't in favor of this originally in the original application. And I was actually, it never came for a vote. So I was happy that they pulled it before. But now that we have the 7-Eleven developed and we have this application coming in, I'm much more in favor of it. And the reason being, it's a non-conflicting time-wise with the traffic, with the Dunkin' Donuts and with the 7-Eleven. And I go up Sycamore every day. So I pass this every morning. And there is a lot of traffic that does go up Sycamore, but it's not necessarily coming out of the 7-Eleven parking lot. There's just a lot of people that use that. If you go to Ocean, if you go to Lakeland Avenue in the mornings, there's a lot of cars heading to Vets Highway. With that being said, now that it's been developed, we have a non-conflicting time-wise and business-wise with the two basically coffee shops with Dunkin' Donuts and the 7-Eleven. So I think that's something to look at. The one thing that I would like to look at is when they do the landscaping up on Sunrise Highway, which thank you very much for adding this much landscape there, but the heights and everything and the setbacks should be looked at for people that have to look for the westbound cars coming as they're pulling out, because that is a busy strip in the morning. The cross access is only going to eliminate 2 parking spaces between the Dunkin' Donuts and this. So I think that's something that we were looking at originally that we didn't know if it could get done. But with these things being done now, I'm looking at it in a favorable way right now.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do we have further questions from board members? Ms. Cruz.
My only concern would be, or my suggestion would be, to really look into some sort of taller fence, because that's a lot of activity happening in, these backyards. So I would like to see something a little bit more, a bigger fence or some sort of attenuation wall, as we had discussed. Because I think that's, even if somebody is waiting in the queuing, they could have their music on, they have their windows down in the summer. So I think that would help it a lot. I don't think it's terrible because it is on Sunrise Highway, but I do feel like a lot more needs to be done than just trees for the neighbors in the back.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Anything further from the board? Not seeing anything. Anything further from the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, if you would just afford me 1 second, I just had a call from one of the owners. I just want to check and see if he's got a particular issue. Bear with me 1 moment, please.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I have another comment. Well, the one thing that with putting a drive-through here at this restaurant is, if it's starting at Lakeland Avenue, you have the Burger King. And then as you come down across the street, you have the McDonald's, you have the Starbucks that will pass also. And then on the other side of the street, I believe the pharmacy, we did a drive-through there also behind the McDonald's. And in the big picture, this is Sunrise Highway. And I think that's where we do want to see applications like this in Business 3.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just spoke with one of the principals of the applicant. He was anxious for everyone to know there's only one speaker at the first location. The other is a preview board, and it does have sound attenuation qualities, which we'll submit specifications on to the staff.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Hines?
No, sir. Thank you very much for your consideration and kind attention.
Thank you. And you've heard the concerns expressed this evening. I'd ask you to work with planning staff to see if we can resolve those to the satisfaction of the board members' concerns and the residents' concerns. With that being said, is there a motion? Mr. Matamore.
I move to close the hearing and reserve decision so that all the comments tonight can be reviewed in detail, and as many of those addressed as positively as possible before we take a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Matamore. As a matter, a motion by Mr. Matamore to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second?
I would second, Mr. Chair.
Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions were reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Good evening.
Item 4 on the agenda, Town Board Application, Public Hearing, Bay Islip Associates, CZ 2022-001, south side of East Main Street, State Route 27A, approximately 440 feet west of Saxon Avenue, Bayshore, 430 East Main Street. Applicant requests a change of zone from Business 1 to Business 3, and a Town Board special permit for a fast food restaurant pursuant to 68-302G. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant. Mr. Guardino, if you're with us on mute, you can go ahead.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Guardino, a partner with Farrell Fritz, and I'm representing the applicant Bay Islip Associates in connection with this application. It's good to see you all. I also have with me tonight Alex Holloman from Bowler Engineering and Ethan Shasky from Atlantic Traffic and Design. Also present is Valentine Stoller, who is a principal with Bay Islip Associates. The application that's before you is for a new 2,890 square foot Starbucks restaurant with a 13-car drive-through and outdoor seating, and that would be located at 430 East Main Street in Bay Shore. East Main Street, as you know, is also Montauk Highway. Starbucks would occupy the existing vacant HSBC Bank building, which is located in the northeast corner of the parking lot that serves an existing former retail shopping center that is now occupied by Northwell Health's Cancer Center. The HSBC Bank building is located on a separate tax lot within that shopping center or that former shopping center. There is also a freestanding TD Bank and an RBK pediatric medical office in that center, both located on the east side of the property. And again, they are both located on separate tax lots, as is this HSBC Bank pad. The overall parcel, so the entire center is about 7 acres in size, and that's inclusive of these other 3 tax lots where you have these other 3 buildings I just mentioned. All the tax lots that comprise the subject property are currently zoned B1, and B1 does not permit the proposed Starbucks, as you know. Accordingly, the applicant is before the board today seeking a rezoning of approximately 30,300 square foot former HSBC Bank tax lot from B1 to B3 in order to allow for the Starbucks restaurant with the drive-through and the accessory outdoor seating. We believe that the site is appropriate for B3 zoning because one, it is located along Montauk Highway, which is a heavily traveled road that travels through Bay Shore. Second reason is the site is not located directly adjacent to any residential uses. There is a residential use to the west, the Windermere Pond condo development that is located to the west of the site, but it's across the creek on the other side. And 3, there is B3 zoning directly across the street on the corner of Saxon and Montauk Highway in the shopping center that's located on the north side of Montauk Highway. All of the parcels will continue to be owned by the landlord, Bay Islip Associates, and the site will appear and operate as a single integrated center and parcel. We will need a town board special permit for the fast food restaurant, and we will be seeking that from the town board if we get a favorable recommendation from this board. We will also need site plan modifications. We need for parking, and we will need it for minimum buffer along Montauk Highway and also for the required number of street trees along Montauk Highway. With respect to each of them, the overall parcel will require parking relaxation because there will be 355 spaces provided where 388 spaces are required. This is we believe, a modest deviation. It's only about 8.6% relaxation. And I do want to point out that there was a prior approval for the Northwell Health facility in 2013, and that approved a parking relaxation of 9.3%. So the current proposal requires less of a parking variance than the approval that was granted just a couple of years ago. The minimum buffer along Montauk Highway street frontage is proposed at 5.5 feet, where 8 feet is required. That is an existing condition of the center. And I also want to point out that that existing condition resulted from a New York State Department of Transportation taking that took place several years ago. And finally, the town, with respect to street trees, the town now requires that street trees be planted every 20 feet on center along the street frontages. But the planning board in 2010 required the applicant to plant street trees every 25 feet on center along Montauk Highway. My client would like to preserve and maintain all of those existing street trees and not have to rip them out to recenter them at 20 feet. Of course, if there are any dead trees in that area that were required to be planted in 2010, we will, of course, replant those and replace those. We will ultimately need a zoning board variance for lot area, because this tax lot is only, like I said, it's 30,277 square feet, and the town code requires 40,000 square feet for this type of use. The restaurant, again, be one story, 2,890 square feet, will be a single drive-through window, will be a total of 58 seats. There'll be 42 indoor seats and 16 outdoor seats. The site plan for the overall center proposes a total of 355 parking spaces, as I mentioned. Mr. Shatsky is going to explain that those spaces will be more than adequate to accommodate the Starbucks and all of the other uses on the property. The Starbucks parcel represents, we believe, an appropriate reuse of an existing unsightly vacant bank building at the entrance of the shopping center, and one that is very visible from Montauk Highway. So we think it will be a significant improvement with respect to architecture by adding this attractive restaurant that will have extensive landscaping, more than is there now, and green space. And then finally, the surrounding area. Again, the pad is well suited, we believe, for the B3 zoning, because the area that surrounds this restaurant along Montauk Highway is mostly commercial in nature. Again, there is the multifamily condo complex to the west, but again, it is across the creek. There is a large shopping center directly to the north, which is again partially zoned B3 on the corner. Bay Islip's own property is going to buffer the surrounding Starbucks to the from the properties, or to the properties to the east and to the south. I should say to the south and to the west. At this time, I would like to call Alex Holloman to just maybe explain the site plan for the board and perhaps some more detail. Alex, are you available?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
So the subject site is a pad within a larger shopping center at the southwest corner of East Main Street and Saxon Avenue, where Northwell Health is a major tenant in a former supermarket space. The pad is occupied, our project pad is currently occupied by an existing building that's formerly a bank of drive-through, and we are simply proposing to convert that prior use to the Starbucks drive-through use. The overall shopping center is currently accessed by 2 full movement driveways along East Main Street and 3 full movement driveways along South Saxon Avenue. We are proposing the western driveway of East Main Street be converted to an ingress only drive-through. The other access points I mentioned will remain as they are today. The proposed drive-through queue allows for 13 vehicles before impacting site circulation or parking. And even then, if additional queue is found, they will not impact the roadway network. Our traffic engineer, who will speak after me, will further discuss this queue. We are also proposing a bypass lane adjacent to the drive-through for vehicles to circulate throughout the site if needing to exit the drive-through prior to ordering. We're proposing parking just north of the building as shown in the site plan on your screen. We are also proposing additional landscaping, which doesn't currently exist. There is an increase in pervious landscaping area in the proposed condition versus the existing condition, which we feel provides a better aesthetic. Additionally, we are proposing, as Mr. Cordino mentioned previously, 16 outdoor seats to serve the new coffee shop. We feel that this is a nice complement to the Northwell Code tenancy and will provide a great area for the Northwell employees to spend their breaks. There's some other minor modification proposed with the site plan to provide safely connect the pedestrians from the Starbucks and the Northwell as they travel between the two buildings. These improvements also provide better vehicular maneuverability and safety for this area south of the proposed Starbucks development. The next presenter is Ethan from Atlantic Traffic and Design, who will speak more on his work with the traffic and parking study.
Alex, can you just spell your last name for the record, please?
Yes, Holloman, Holleman.
Thank you. And Ethan, if you can state your last name and spell it as well for the record when you start. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. For the record, it's Ethan Chukoski. It's Schukoske. I'm with Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering. We're located at 2929 Expressway Drive North in Hauppauge, New York. We prepared a traffic and parking report for the proposed development dated in December of 2021, excuse me. Yeah, our traffic and parking projections were a bit conservative for a couple of reasons. For one reason, we didn't include internal trip capture. And for this particular development, we're expecting there to be a lot of internal trips. So, in addition to vehicles on East Main Street, exiting East Main Street and stopping at the Starbucks, we expect a lot of the patrons of this particular Starbucks to be Northwell Health. That large medical office building, is a great opportunity for, shared business within the center. So when we looked at the parking, we looked at each individual use, and we used Institute of Transportation Engineers parking generation manual, which is our industry standard for calculating any parking demand for any given use. So we looked at the proposed Starbucks site. We looked at the Northwell Health and medical offices, as well as the bank in the northeast corner of the site. We found that the total peak parking demand for a weekday for all three uses would be 194 parked vehicles on average. The other reason why that's a conservative number is because that doesn't take into time of day. The drive-in bank using IT data would have a peak parking demand around 3 p.m. on weekdays, whereas the medical office would peak, around 11 a.m. And Starbucks on a typical weekday would peak around 9 a.m. So they have different periods of peak demand, and so we didn't exactly take that into account. We just looked at whatever the average peak was for each of the uses, and we added it up. That came up to 194 parked cars, where the site's providing 355. So that would provide a reserve capacity of 161, or 45% of the center. And really, the Starbucks is going to peak on a Saturday as opposed to the weekday. So for those reasons, we believe there's adequate parking on site for the proposed Starbucks development. And we also evaluated the traffic and queuing and find that the site design is adequate, for the proposed increase in traffic, and result in minimal increases in delay that are still within acceptable level of service for the existing driveways. So with that, I can answer any questions the board has.
Thank you. We'll let Ms. Guardino finish the presentation, go to the public, get a staff report, then come back for questions.
Okay, that essentially concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Let's go to the public portion and the staff report, then we'll come back for some questions. I see we have one person signed up. I'm going to get this last name wrong, but is it Ela Balchaitis? I apologize in advance if I got that incorrect. You're in the room. Just go ahead and unmute when you want to speak.
No, you're fine. It's Ela Balchaitis. Thank you for having me join the meeting. I am the board president of the Homeowners Association of the Windcrest community, which is directly south of where this is going to be. It's just on the property line of behind the Cancer Center building.
Yes.
Where I guess it's probably about 1,000 feet as the crow flies south. And I do have some concerns about the location of the garbage and what, if any, rodent or rat problems we may have as a result of that, because it's a straight shot back to us. Also, what are the hours of operation and what type of lighting is there going to be? Do we have any information on that?
Yes, I'll get those all addressed for you. Anything else, question-wise, you want me to have addressed?
Sure. As in the previous applicant, we're talking about the decibel level of the intercom, the in-queue noise of cars idling, radios in the summertime, the concerns about outdoor seating and what problems that may encounter as a result of how late the operation is open. The previous gentleman had also mentioned something about a buffer property to the south and west. Obviously, we're to the south. I'm not quite sure I understand where that is. And will the outdoor seating be to the south of the property? I guess those are some of my issues, and whether or not, as far as the lighting is concerned, is what type of lighting is there at nighttime? And is that through the entire evening? Is that 24/7? So there's a few issues there.
Thank you. We will get them addressed for you. Thank you for speaking. I do not see anyone else who signed up to speak on this application. Did anybody else who joined late want to speak? Hit the raise your hand function and we can have you
Where is raise your hand?
speak now. And not seeing anyone else.
Hold it. Raise your hand.
Oh, does somebody want to be heard? I'm not sure who's speaking right now.
Yes.
Okay, go right ahead. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Ted Sonacola. I live in the Windermere Pond, which is just west of the proposed Starbucks. And there's a couple of concerns. And the woman that was just in front of us stole part of my thunder. But one of the big concerns that we have is that on the west, the very far west entrance into the parking lot, which is directly in front of the building, we're concerned about cars backing up onto Montauk Highway to get into the drive-through, which can propose a problem. There's a lot of accidents that have been there over the course of the years. I'm here 26 years. We have a supermarket and a shopping center across the street. We have a gas station across the street. With the traffic backing up, now having one lane going east and one lane going west, you kind of cut that traffic, that area in half, just like up the block that you have at a Taco Bell. That's one of the concerns. Is there any possibility or anything in the plans to block off that western exit to get in, or entry to get into it, and go through the main driveway that's in the center of the property so that they can loop around and go into the drive-through? That's one concern that I have, or we have. I'm representing a bunch of people in the complex. The second thing is, as far as what are we doing as far as a buffer and or landscaping or whatever they want to put, that's the western part of their property that would both the eastern property of our property where the creek is. The creek is mentioned, but the creek is only about 24 feet. We're less than 100 feet away from that property. If you go from our property line to the property line of the said Starbucks, that is a concern about what would happen there. The other thing is, which was alluded to, is like, I think in the site plan that was put out, they're talking about putting the dumpster on the west side of where we are, of the west side of their property, which would be a concern. You know, we have a creek there. we do have rodents and whatever there, which would add to the problem. So is there anything in the proposal or anything that we can address on that?
Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking this evening. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this application this evening who's joined us late or who has not signed up to speak? Please hit the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. Not seeing anyone, I'm going to go to Mr. Colgan for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application proposes a coffee shop with drive-through in an existing bank building. Generally, the planning staff supports fast food restaurants on pad sites where a shopping center can accommodate it without impacting site circulation or on-site traffic. This application provides an opportunity to improve the architecture of the building, as well as provide additional landscaping. A traffic study was submitted and reviewed by the town's traffic consultant. The consultant stated that there is no reason to believe that the drive-through will present any problems. The drive-through queuing area meets the requirements of the code. And even if demand exceeds supply on occasion, there is ample space internal to the site for additional stacking. Converting the westernmost driveway from full operations to entering only operations is also sensible, as per the traffic consultant. The conceptual site plan shows increased landscaping overall and an approximate 8.5% parking relaxation for the entire site. A variance will be needed from the Zoning Board of Appeals for insufficient lot area. These relaxations do not appear problematic, provided that the site maintains cross-access and shared parking with the greater shopping center. Based on the aesthetic improvements and lack of foreseeable adverse impacts, the staff doesn't have any objections to the application. We leave up to the board if we want to look into relocating the dumpster or exploring with the town's traffic consultant whether or not anything else needs to be done to address any concerns over the western entrance.
Thank you, Mr. Colgan. So some of the residents brought up some of my famous questions. One I immediately have a problem with is the dumpster being right on top of the brook, which one may lead to not only the rodent problem, but certainly things being spilled into the brook or into the waterway there. So I would like to see that move somewhere else where, I don't know, but I'm not a fan of putting the dumpster right up against the brook itself. I did have a concern about the western access, not for the reason that the resident raised, but for a different reason. One is I just think it creates a problem with the drive-through queue going right there. And I think as part of the presentation, we talked about a lot of the customers may be coming directly from the Northwell Health. If they're going to be walking through from where they are to get to the Starbucks, that obviously may create an unsafe traffic condition as they're walking out in front of the cars that are waiting in the queue, and you have a car speeding by who came in to get to the end of the queue. So I think that westerly entrance, for the reason stated by the resident, as well as what I just mentioned, is something that probably should be looked at. In terms of the lighting and the sounds and those general questions that were asked by the resident to the south, can you just cover those, how that would work in terms of the requirements, either Mr. Colgan or Mr. Guardino, the lighting requirements, night sky compliant, and the rest, the sound from the speakers, if you actually have that decibel levels. Obviously, this is a much quieter area than, especially at the early morning hours and late evening hours, than the Sunrise Highway application we heard earlier.
Sure. So, as per town code, all of the lighting would be dark sky compliant lighting. That would have to be, wall washers on the building. And, Alex, I don't know if you have any more you can add to that with respect to what Starbucks asks for, but, I've done a number of these, and Starbucks has always, to my knowledge, complied with whatever the requirements are for down lighting, shielded lighting, dark sky compliant lighting. So I don't think lighting will be an issue. And also, even if it was an issue, and I know it won't be, but the buffer to the west that separates this site from the Windermere Pond development is, there is the creek in there, and I know the gentleman said it was 24 feet wide, but it's a heavily wooded area. So I don't think anybody would see this, and clearly the people who live in the Windcrest behind the cancer center will not see anything. If it's all dark sky compliant lighting, they won't. This building is just simply not going to be visible to them. So I don't think lighting is an issue. If you'd like me to go through the other ones, I had made some notes.
Just any sound, if you decibel level, do you have anything on that you can talk about for the speaker?
I don't. Alex, do you have any details on that, on the sound?
Just to say that the drive-through apparatus for Starbucks is meant to just project sound to a 10-foot radius just for the car that's directly in front of them, and it adjusts for ambient noise. So it is meant to be just for that area and not extend beyond the property lines.
Right. It'd be interesting to know if not maybe this evening, but certainly if you can get it back to the planning staff and we can review it before. It would like to know what the decibel level is or the maximum decibel level is of that. And either Mr. Guardino or Mr. Colgan, what is the current buffer requirement to the west, and is it currently met, or is it relied upon that the plantings that are in the creek area, not on the property line? Is the buffer requirement, what is it, and is it met right now?
Yeah, I don't believe that we, and Alex, I think we meet the requirements for the buffer there. And again, that's all existing, and we're not changing this building in any way or the configuration, even the.
No, just asking for a different use. I want to make sure that if it's allowed a use, that there are residents there that were at least accommodated. Maybe the answer is it's already accommodated. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, Alex, we comply, I believe, correct?
That is correct. We are in compliance. The side yard setback is 10 feet, and we're keeping that western curb line intact and not proposing any encumbrances beyond that. So we're keeping that existing condition.
So the dumpster is not cutting into the 10-foot?
Correct. We have a dimension there where it's shown as 24.9 to the edge of the curb.
And Mr. Colgan, for the westerly requirements there, are they met?
I'm looking at the site plan now. It looks about approximately 25-foot buffer. Trying to pull up the aerial.
Okay, just
Because
one concern.
to supplement any plantings, particularly near the speaker area.
Right. And then is this restricted to a coffee shop only?
That we would have to do by covenant. That's something we could explore with the applicant.
Mr. Guardino, that's okay, that it's Starbucks or it's coffee shop only?
I have to check with my client. I know that you guys, the board has required that in the past, but that's something I will discuss with my client.
I'm going to turn to, while Mr. Colgan's looking that up, I'm not sure if any of the other board members have any questions.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
So I'm going to go, I have Mr. Moriarty and then Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a little bit of a concern, maybe not a little bit of concern, actually, just a question. I mean, how are you going to prevent the queuing line from not, accidentally spilling out into Montauk Highway through that westerly entrance? I understand it's supposed to go back into the parking lot, but if the line is short and isn't necessarily filled, isn't there the possibility that folks are going to exit or enter, that westerly entrance and immediately try to get on the queuing line? And therefore, the line just naturally goes in that direction. I guess that's the concern. I'm fine with the layout, assuming you can get that traffic queuing line into your parking lot. I'm more concerned about the drivers and how you're going to prevent the driver from just entering and immediately getting on a queuing line, and then the guy behind him just follows in, and then eventually it just spills out. And the reason I raised that is, all the residents in this area are very, very concerned about what's happened up in Taco Bell, which is all of 1,000 feet to the east, where there are major spillovers into Montauk Highway on a regular basis. I understand your design is intending to prevent that, but how do you really prevent that when a driver just comes in and starts getting in the line and the guy behind him just gets in the line, and then all of a sudden you have a line of traffic spilling out into Montauk Highway, which is what the Taco Bell problem is. So I'm not asking for an answer right now. I think you really need to get me comfortable on that, and I think probably some of the other board members as well, that through no fault of your own, it's just driver action starts creating problems. And I'd like to see some way you can lay this out to prevent that from happening. I think you're going to get a lot of traffic moving in through that entrance and just looking to get immediately on the line as opposed to going all the way around the entire property and then entering the queue. So that's just the concern there that I just want to get comfortable on that. I think that's my major concern. I agree with the dumpster siting as well. I'm a little bit concerned about that as well. I think it needs to go somewhere else. So those are my two concerns. I think I just want to make sure you guys address when you're interacting with staff over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. I don't know if Ms. Guardino or Alex, I keep forgetting your last name because it's not on the screen in front of me, but either Alex or Mr. Guardino, I'm not sure if you want to address any of Mr. Moriarty's concerns before I go to Mr. Brown.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, my question's along the same lines. Maybe he'd like to hold off for a second.
Well, hold off and let's go to Mr. Brown, then we can come back with answers. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, and I guess it would be directed towards Mr. Guarino. 13 cars in a queue lane for Starbucks. I know it was looked at by the traffic consultants and that, but from our experience, if you look at any of the Starbucks in our township that we've approved, it doesn't seem like it's enough. I don't know that I've ever gotten a line in a Starbucks and I've been less than number 13 online. Is there any thought to the, or was any thought put into the fact that you may be doing the double queuing line with this application to increase the queue line?
Well, I don't think that was considered at this point, and it's something obviously we could look at if need be. But the fact that this, well, first of all, I'd like to say that I've done a bunch of these Starbucks, and we just got one approved from this board at 12, I believe, at Bayshore by the South Shore Mall. And I've done other ones that had shorter queuing lanes. And listen, I appreciate what you're saying. I have seen some where the queuing does spill out and go further than we anticipated. I think the way this is configured, it's almost it's protected from that concern because as you get to 14, 15, 16, 17, you're still in the shopping center drive aisle in an area where no one's parking. So that's an open area of the shopping center closest to Montauk Highway. So while we're showing 13 cars, and again, we're showing 13 cars because those 13 cars are what fit on the tax lot, but the tax lot line is just an imaginary line. The line can continue on in the shopping center because this is one integrated parcel. And, I don't know how many cars could fit from 13 all the way to the main entrance, but that's the real queuing capacity of this center, which I think is more than enough. I believe, I don't know what that number is, but it's got to be 17 or 18 cars at least. So
what about the westerly entrance? I mean, it's a real concern that was raised by the resident, Mr. Moriarty, is the fact that if people pull in straight, that may then spill out into the street.
Yeah, we looked at that and we considered when, we were looking at this, we're going to look at it again and see if we can do it with signage. We thought maybe by painting, so make it very clear that this is not a place where somebody's supposed to drive over. We can consider a physical barrier if need be. That's a little bit more problematic when it comes to snow plowing and whatnot. But I think there's a way to address the concern because I think there's some validity to it. You can't control what people are going to do unless you physically or very clearly with signage and paint, make it clear that you're not supposed to enter here. But we will look at that.
Is there any reason why you would not close that entrance?
Well, I mean, that's something I talk to with my landlord. I mean, we do have other obligations to tenants in this shopping center. So I don't even know if that's even a possibility. I mean, the fact that this was a bank and it was open and the leases were signed with Northwell and TD and the pediatrics facility, based on a site plan with all of this access, when you close an access point, you need consent of the other tenants. I just don't know where that lies.
Anthony, this is Valentine Stahl. Do you mind if I jump in on this point?
Sure, please do.
Yeah, sure. So this is, is a state highway, so it's under the jurisdiction of the New York State DOT. We've made an application to them. I don't think we've gotten any comments back. So that is really sort of the confounding factor on, what we can really do or not do with this entrance. But I guess as it relates to Traffic queuing, it's certainly a concern. We can look at striping, as Anthony said. However, I think, in our experience, we see, people really learn, customers learn. If you are thinking that the queue is going to be 13 cars long, they're probably, if someone does go in, they're probably going to drive around the site and get to the back of the queue. I guess one comment that I want to bring up as it relates to the western boundary, there's an existing fence, right? So that already blocks sound, blocks visibility, and that's shown at the curb line. And we're not proposing any changes to the curb line, and we're not proposing any changes to the fence to restrict any further encroachment to the Awixa Brook.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is, I think Ms. Guardino said this, you can put up all the striping you want and the rest. Sometimes you get people who do as they please. The Taco Bell up the road is a prime example. They cars back up heading eastbound on the highway, and those heading westbound sit there with their left signal on, blocking Montauk Highway to turn into the middle of the lane. They don't go swing around behind them, which creates a problem there. So I think we really need to look at that and address that with the state and see the comments back from the state on that. Not looking to do anything different. I'm just calling, I don't know if you got the answer. We're certainly asking to intensify the use along the brook that's over there with a lot more cars, with sound and everything else. I want to make sure that the buffer that is supposed to be in place is in place. I know it's an existing condition, but we're also asking to intensify the use. There's conditions of granting that intensification of the use, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I want to make sure there's a buffer there that meets the requirements. If it doesn't, then I'm certainly going to ask, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but for you to meet that buffer requirement along that side, again, it is a brook, there is water in there. We don't want the dumpster there infringing upon that. We want to make sure that that is protected, and the neighbors to the east with an intensification of use have the proper buffer that's supposed to be there. I know that there's 24 feet that's probably within the brook itself. I don't know what the buffer is supposed to be for the shopping center. Sean, I don't know if you're able to pull that up. If not, we can get it certainly after the meeting, but if you have that information.
I'm looking at the site plan now. I mean, between the property line and where it seems to be the edge of that brook, or maybe it's the water, the wetlands line, it's about 25 feet. So the fence is a little beyond that. And I just look at the Google Street View real quickly. There is some natural plantings there. I'll go over with engineering to see if there's any opportunity to supplement any of that, particularly if we're going to move the dumpster. But obviously that's not an area you literally want to disturb, at least not within the wetlands area. So anything we supplement would probably be around where the dumpster is proposed, where it may not necessarily stay.
Yeah, anything on the property, within the property line, if it's not already part of the buffer, that the buffer meets whatever the buffer requirements are, if there is a buffer requirement. So that's what my concern is there. The other thing that was asked that we didn't address, and I think it's on the diagram, is the outdoor seating. Is that in front of the building on the north side?
That's correct.
So it's on the north side of the building. Okay. Do we have further questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
No, you asked about hours of operation.
I'm sorry. Hours of operation, Mr. Guardino, and then I'll go to Ms. Cruz.
Yeah, you had mentioned that 5 a.m. To 11 p.m. are the typical hours of the Starbucks. And somebody mentioned about the outdoor seating. As you know, the town code requires outdoor seating only be used between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. So we would obviously comply with that requirement.
Thank you. Ms. Cruz?
Oh, I wanted to go back to that entrance. I know that, just to make a comment, like as those cars are right now in the queue, if you came in from that entrance and you saw that the line was this big, now you have to go just for traffic, right? Now you got whoever came in through that entrance is going to go all the way down, have to start making U-turns and backing up and to go right behind that last car that you have in your queue. So right there, you're causing havoc, some sort of like backing into some other cars because those are parking spots there. And there's, your design shows there's some sort of blockage there. So you're making people do all these maneuvers to get behind this one car if they came in that direction from that entrance. So that's just another point to let you know that that's kind of like a little, you're going to make people do things there. So just take a look at it.
We will, but I think, because this is right on Montauk Highway, I think that someone, as they would, if they were pulling in that entrance and saw that the queuing line was at 13, they would just drive to the main entrance. You know, that would, they would see it. It's right in front of.
But if they already pulled in, you're not gonna go, what are you gonna back into, you're not gonna back up back into some, Montauk Highway. You're gonna stay in the, in the parking lot is what I'm saying. And then now you gotta, make a U-turn, figure out how to get behind this other car. And that's just all I was gonna say. Once you pull in and you see all those cars there, now you have to maneuver into figuring out how to get behind that last car in the parking lot.
I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's
That's all.
I don't think it's a difficult move because there is circulation through the entire center. So yes, they would come around the back of the building and just drive through a drive aisle and then go down one of the drive parking aisles.
You're saying they're gonna go all the way around the building, come back around to the.
Only if they had to. I don't think they're going to do that at all. I personally think they would drive to the next entrance where they can quickly get onto line. I think that, and as Valentine said, people are gonna, they learn pretty quickly.
You're giving people a lot of credit.
You do it once and then
you're giving people a lot of credit. All
If I
right.
could just speak to that real quick. I mean, if you do enter that entrance and you go down, there is a circulation aisle on the south side, and there's striping to direct traffic on the right way to go. So and I'm not sure the exact signing, but you see the arrows on the bottom of the page. And then one other thing, just I wanted to mention, there was a talk about other drive-throughs and how long those queues are. We did study a couple drive-throughs to come up with our analysis, but on top of that, this is a better operation than some of the existing drive-throughs because the order point is at the 7th car. Starbucks has put a lot of research into the optimal location for ordering in order to get the orders out to the customer the most efficiently. Most of the existing stores are around the 5th car. By making that order point at the 7th car, it allows, based on their calculations, the optimal amount of time to prepare the order by the time you reach the window, and makes that operation work a little bit better. So I just want to bring that to attention too, that with this new development, it may work a little bit better than some of those existing locations.
And then just to Ms. Cruz's point, I think if you're at car 12 or 13, Mr. Ward, what you said will probably happen. But if you're at car 9 or 10, you may get somebody pulling in, trying to cleverly maneuver into a U-turn or going into the wrong direction in that little bypass lane to cut in there. And again, you can't fix everybody. Some people get it, some people will never get it. But listen, I think the application has merit. I think there are a couple of issues that were raised tonight that just need to be worked out. And I'd ask that you work with Mr. Colgan and get those addressed as best we can, and we get you back on quickly and take care of this.
Of course.
Yes. Anything further from the applicant or anything further from the board?
No.
Not hearing anything. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Moriarty.
I would move to close the public hearing and reserve decision this evening. Allow planning staff and the applicant to sort through some of the issues that were raised this evening.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing and reserve decision. I see a hand by Mr. Brown. I'll take that as a second. All in favor?
I'll second it. Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? We're adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda, Town Board application, public hearing, 301 West Main Street, LLC, CZ 2022-002, north side of Main Street, State Route 27A, between Sunset Road and Seafield Lane, Bayshore, 301 West Main Street. Applicant requests to change the zone from Residence B and Business 1 to All Business District, and a planning board special permit for a mixed-use building pursuant to 68-257.1G. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's okay. I didn't know if I was still on. Okay. Again, my name is Anthony Guardino, partner with the law firm of Farrell Fritz, Hauppauge, New York, representing the applicant 301 West Main Street, LLC. I have with me tonight Chuck Lembo, who's an architect with Spaces Architecture, and Sean Mulryan, who's a traffic engineer with Mulryan Engineering. And Mr. Mulryan is here, notwithstanding the fact that the town did not require a traffic report for this application, but we thought that it would be a good idea to have him on here in case there are any traffic questions from the board members or from the public. And we will also have him address potential parking issue that may arise and need to be discussed. Just by way of some history here, I just want to digress for a second. Believe it or not, I've been working on this project, on this property for almost 15 years, on and off with this same developer. My files are literally filled with plans for different land uses that were rejected either by the town's planning staff or by the community. Over the years, the property owner has proposed an as-of-right auto parts retail store, a 7-Eleven convenience store, a Dunkin' Donuts, a Starbucks with a drive-through, a bank, a retail gasoline station, and with a convenience store, just to name a few. The site has been, as you probably all know, an eyesore in the community for many, many years. Less so now because the buildings have been demolished, and that was done at the request of the town, and my client accommodated that request. Now that the site is vacant, it is partially paved with the remnants of the paving and concrete that was there from the prior uses. It is overgrown with weeds and other undesirable forms of vegetation. We believe that after 15 years of talking about this application, we think it's time to redevelop the site with an attractive and desirable land use that will meaningfully contribute to the town's tax base. And finally, to give credit where credit is due, the current proposal that is before you for this mixed-use building was a suggestion by the former planning commissioner, Ron Meyer, who felt that this use was an appropriate one for the site. We believe that he is right because this is the first application that we've worked on, or at least that I've worked on, that's actually got some traction. So I think there's something here, and we hope that the board will feel the same way. The application that's before you is for a change of zone to allow for the development of a 3-story, 17,594 square foot commercial mixed use building. The building would occupy a site that is approximately 1 acre in size. It is located, as you can see on the screen, on the north side of West Main Street, which is also Montauk Highway, between Sunset Road and Seafield Lane. The site has some challenges because while it is a full block wide, it is only about 150 feet deep. Access has also been restricted by the DOT, which has strongly suggested that the site's ingress and egress be only from the 2 side streets, namely Sunset and Seafield. The property is currently split zone, with the majority of the site being zoned Business 1, and then to the far north, there is a narrow, about 10.5 feet wide, 10.5 foot wide parcel, which is zoned Residence B, which is a right-of-way. Neither the Business 1 or the Residence B districts allow for the proposed mixed-use building. So the applicant is before the board tonight seeking a rezoning of the entire site to BD Business District, which permits a mixed-use building with a special permit from this board, provided that the commercial use portion of the building occupies a minimum of 30% of the gross floor area of the building. We believe the site is appropriate for BD zoning because it is located along Montauk Highway, which is a heavily traveled state highway that travels through Bayshore. And 2, there is a nearly identical or identically situated block to the east of this site, also north of Montauk Highway, between Seafield Lane and Hemlock Lane, which is zoned BD. So BD exists directly across Seafield Lane on a whole block going to the east. We will need a special permit from this board, as I mentioned, for the mixed-use building, and we will need some site plan modifications for the proposal. The project is going to require modifications from the planning board, or relaxations, I should say, from the planning board for landscape buffers and possibly for parking, and I'll get to that in a minute. As Chuck Lembo is going to explain shortly, the site has 3 road frontages and therefore 3 front yards, and that makes it very, very difficult if not impossible, to comply with the landscape buffer requirements of the town. Although the site plan currently provides 54 parking spaces, which is more than the 50 spaces that are required for this use under the requirements of the town code, we may be tweaking the site plan further to address some additional comments from planning staff, which may cause the removal of some of the spaces on the site plan. And in that case, we may need a site relaxation for parking. We don't know that yet. We will also need one variance from the zoning board, and that relates to the percentage of commercial space within the mixed-use building. The town code requires at least that the commercial portion be at least 30% of the building. My client is proposing 15.1% of the building be dedicated for retail and office space. And the reason for that is, quite frankly, there's not a large market these days for retail space. The building will have a total square footage, as I mentioned, about 17,500 square feet, but the footprint will only be just slightly less than 6,000 square feet. It will be 35 feet in height and 3 stories, which complies with the maximum height that is permitted by the town code in this district. The building will have 18 one-bedroom units on roughly half of the first floor, all of the second floor, and all of the third floor. And the balance of the first floor will be comprised of the 2,672 square foot area dedicated for retail and/or office space. The building's floor area ratio is only 42%, which is 30% less than the 60% or the 0.6 FAR that is otherwise permitted in this zone. And while we do not meet the landscape buffer requirements, this entire site will be tastefully landscaped with a 10-foot landscape buffer around the south, east, and west sides of the building, or of the property, I should say, and at least a 15-foot buffer on the north side of the property, which will actually be a total of 25 feet on the northeast side of the property, and I will just discuss that in a minute. The site is well suited, we believe, for business BD zoning, and the proposed mixed use, as the area surrounding the site is comprised of a mixture of commercial and residential uses. To the south, you have Mavis Tire and Pizzeria. To the west, you have the Forum Diner. To the east is the block of stores, offices, restaurants, and the billiard parlor that I mentioned earlier, which is Zone BD, similar to what we're asking for. And there are single-family homes located to the north along Sunset Road and Seafield Lane in the Lawrence Farm subdivision. The single-family home to the northwest on Sunset Road makes use currently of a 10-foot right-of-way, of that 10-foot right-of-way strip that I mentioned earlier. That is part of the subject property. They use it as a driveway that provides access to their garage. We are respecting that easement and that driveway. We have no intention of interfering with that. And we will be landscaping to separate the driveway from the rest of our site. The home to the northeast on Seafield Lane does not use this easement and is not able to, because there are 2 existing utility poles right smack in the middle of the easement area. So they can't use this as a driveway. There's just no way that they would be able to do that. The portion of the right-of-way in this area will not be improved. We're not using it as part of the site other than for, again, landscaping purposes. And that will result in a 25-foot landscape buffer along the northeastern portion of the property. So that house will be buffered by 25 feet. The house in the northwest will be buffered by 15 feet. But of course, their driveway is buffering their home further. So in effect, you have 25 feet of distance or of separation. If I could introduce Chuck Lembo from Spaces Architecture to maybe go over the site plan. Chuck, would you be kind enough to do that?
Good evening. Hi. Yeah, sure. So we've placed the building in the southeast corner of Seafield and West Main. We're trying to adhere to all the requirements for the downtown development, keeping the building close to the street within 10 feet of the property line. And then we're providing parking around the north and the west sides. As per the DOT requirements, when we applied previously for in a different direction, it was strongly suggested that we not provide any type of curb cut on West Main, and they want the curb cuts to be only on Sunset and Seafield. And working with planning, we determined the minimum distance from the corners, the intersections that we meet. So we're providing, we do have 2 commercial spaces, which total, I don't have, hold on a second, 2,672 square feet, which equates to a proposed 15% of the total building square footage. They would be located on that corner, the intersection of Seafield and West Main, and they take up the entire east side of the first floor of the building. Then there are apartments. It's a mix of studio and 1-bedroom apartments for the remainder of the first floor and the entirety of the second and third floors. We are in compliance with FAR requirements and the overall height of the building. And based on the way this parking is currently laid out, we actually provide 4 more spaces than were required. I think we're required 50, and we currently show 54. I think Anthony will revisit that. There were some comments from planning where they may want us to actually land bank some and provide additional landscaping or some type of amenity on the site. That hasn't been determined yet. As far as the design of the building, we're going with a mixture of different elements and trims, trying to make it interesting by breaking it up and highlighting the commercial areas in a bit of a different way than we are the residential areas. Initially, I'm not sure what else I can say. Anthony, is there anything you want me to touch on that I haven't?
No, I think you should just highlight, though, for the board, the fact that this building has been pulled as far forward as possible to keep it as far away as possible from any of the residential uses to the north.
Well, it's a combination of that requirement, trying to keep it away from the residential parts as much as possible, and also to adhere with the business district requirement of keeping the buildings as close to the street frontage as possible and not having any parking, in between the building and the street, to give it a real street presence for pedestrian access.
Right. I would just point out that, that if the board looks at the block to the east, the other BD block where the stores are, you can see the backs of the stores are fairly close to the homes to the north. And, I would think personally that that's a less desirable situation than having this building, number one, be a clean use where you don't have dumpsters and garbage in the back, up against the fence line, and again, the building being, nearly 100 feet away from their properties. So, I just would ask the board just consider that, we're somewhat limited in what we could do with the site, again, because it is not that deep. But I think that Chuck did a good job here in being sensitive to the concerns of the neighbors and still, accomplishing what the applicant was looking to accomplish here.
Lembo, I know you stated that the height meets the requirements. If it's not changed, the zone is not changed, what is the height requirement, and are you over it?
To be honest, it's a business 1, and off the top of my head, I don't know what the height requirement is, and I'm pretty sure it's 2 stories.
Right. So this is you're proposing 3, so you'd be over the height, unless
we're proposing to be within the height requirements of the zone we're requesting it be changed to. So.
Right. I hear what you're saying. I just wanted to point out that it's currently not zoned that way, and I would have a concern with that. Mr. Guardino, the one thing I just want to put out there from the beginning on this, I mean, I've not been on the board for the previous applications. I don't know what transpired. I've heard some of the stories behind that. Obviously, the property owner has a piece of property there that has certainly a right to do something within the current zoning. But, the board has been pretty clear through the several last hearings, not related to this property, that, there was sort of a moratorium on apartments in Bay Shore. So coming in here and saying that 2/3 of the use of this building is apartments, for me, is a non-starter. I mean, there's nothing else for me to even look at. You forget about the height, the rest, and what's out there. But I've made it clear for the last several applications, you can go pull the minutes and listen to those applications, that right now Bay Shore is at its max in terms of apartments. So for me, I mean, I'll go through the whole application with you, I'll talk about it, but I have other concerns about the application. But from the perspective of coming in here and telling me you want to put 2/3 residential in there and 2/3 is 18 apartments, for me is an absolute non-starter. But if you want to speak to that, please feel free to do so. Please feel free to finish your application. But that is, I don't want to try to be upfront and honest on every application that comes before me, and let applicants know where I stand. For me, that is an absolute non-starter from the position I've taken in terms of Bay Shore and apartments.
Okay, well, as you know, I mean, this is a use that the code recognizes. Again, if we have the BD zoning, it's recognized as a special permit, which is, a special permit use, which is tantamount to a permitted use, provided we meet the requirements. Now, of course, we have to get over the hurdle of the change of zone. So that's, and that's a significant hurdle. So we have to deal with that. But I would point out, and I do know that there's a concern about, the proliferation of apartments in Bay Shore, but I don't view this part of Bay Shore as being similar to the part of Bay Shore where all the apartments are going, because really I think the concern of the board, and I may be wrong, is that too many people are taking advantage of the downtown development district density bonuses, and they're trying to build as many apartments as possible on those parcels that are within the downtown development district overlay zone. This parcel is not. This is outside of that area. Yes, it's got a mailing address of Bay Shore. It's right on the border of Brightwaters. I don't know if that matters to you. I'm just raising it because I think it is a distinction, but I don't know if you would agree with that.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's not downtown. It is still Bay Shore. It is still Main Street. It gets the benefit of why you even have the opportunity to do this where it is. And I'd also say that, while you might not be taking advantage of the BD, or downtown, what you can get, you are coming in here saying it's supposed to be 30% commercial. I'm only 115, so I can put more residential units. So we are certainly trying to take advantage of certain things there as well. So maybe not for the same purposes as the people with the density downtown, but you are coming before us saying something that's normally 30%, I want to make 15%, so I can expand residential.
Right.
But again, I'm one person on the board. I know other board members expressed concerns about the proliferation of apartments in downtown Bay Shore. So we'll come back to more questioning. I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, and I appreciate that. If I can ask you, and I don't have any authority, obviously, to change anything for my client, but does your view change if this was a mixed use building that actually complied with the set aside?
I don't know for the other board members. For me right now, the apartments in downtown Bay Shore right now is on hold.
Okay, all right.
So to change the zone to permit that would not be something I'd be in favor of.
Appreciate your candor. Thank you.
Again, I'm one person. You have 6 other members here to convince as well. So
We're running out of land uses. I don't know what else we do with this.
I'm always happy to sit down with you and talk through, as you know, what possibilities are out there in terms of the current zoning or minor changes. But I would not be in favor of that. But I don't want to stop your application. There's 6 other board members. But
yes, okay, thank you, and appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, I guess at this point, Sean, do you want to say anything on the traffic side? I mean, I know traffic was not an issue. And again, I don't even know if the parking needs to be discussed, because until planning asks us to modify the site to remove the parking spaces, we're actually compliant. We're over parked by 4. Sean, does the board want to hear from Mr. Mulryan, or?
I can tell you from my perspective, parking calculations I've seen make sense. It's unfortunately use that's the problem. And my other concern is certainly the building to the east, I believe, is a 2-story building. Would this be higher than its height wise, or would it be the same height?
Well, I know the building next door I saw from the aerial is just 2 stories. I don't know what its height is. I don't know what it measures.
Right. Just certainly another concern if we're going up high with the residences right behind it. But I'm only one. The other board members can certainly ask questions. We can hear from the community as well.
I don't know
But
if
please
any
finish.
board members have questions, or the public are happy to answer
Just-
any.
I don't know, Mr. Brown, Mr. Moriarty, before I go to the public, is there anything?
I,
Mr. Cruz or
I
Mr.
for one
Manuel?
would like to hear the public
Okay.
comments before I ask my questions.
Sure. So there's nothing else from the board, Mr. Guardian. Do you have anything further on your presentation?
No, nothing further at this time.
So why don't we go to the questions from the public hearing, then we'll come back for the staff report, and then we'll go into some board questions. So I'm going to go right here. I'm just going to write down the list. Patrick Kiernan. You're live, Mr. Kiernan.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Loved all your comments about the first of all the garbage easements. Do appreciate that. Particular to this this property, I'm a resident of Seafield Lane. A couple of things concern me right off the bat. We're talking about 54 spaces, but we already know that they're going to be reduced, and we're going to have to modify that. And then also, we're going 3 stories, a height of 35 feet, which isn't feasible. But also, like you had mentioned, I think we're pretty much overdrawn on the apartments that we have in Bayshore. We haven't even had them all built, and we don't know what the effect that they're going to be on our community. We also don't know if we can employ all these people who are going to stay here. So right now, yes, this property has been an eyesore. The town forced the landowner to tear it down. I think the citizens of Lawrence Farms, very proud, might be able to do something better with it. But I agree with your point. Right now, it just doesn't make sense to do anything with this property, and I don't think they're coming forward with something that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Kiernan. And I want to say, I'm not saying there's nothing that can be done there, but I just think it's got to fit the character and nature of zoning and what's in the area. I'm going to go to
100%.
And this, okay, just want to make sure I wasn't misquoted there. I'm going to go to Mr. Stringer. Tom Stringer. Mr. Stringer, you're in the room. When you're ready, just unmute. Go ahead. Mr. Stringer, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you go. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. You know, guaranteed once a day in the Zoom area, you forget to take the mute button off. But Tom Stringer, resident of 6 West Lane. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your comments earlier. I think they were spot on regarding the moratorium in Bayshore. I'm a land use attorney myself, practicing in New York City, and quite frankly, I live at 6 West Lane, just so you know. So I'm actually across Montauk Highway. I'm the first house on West Lane. So I look at this site and I see a lot of potential uses, and I certainly appreciate the advocacy of council on this, but I think there was a little bit of revisionist history in what was presented to this board in the past by this developer. And I think this ask for a 3-story building falls right in line with the previous activities of this developer. Someone in the 3rd or even the 2nd story of this property will see right into my backyard, my neighbor's backyard. And I'm not opposed to anyone using their property to make a buck. That's what we all do. I'm opposed to someone making a buck at my expense and devaluing my privacy and my property. I have to say the counsel for the other side was also disingenuous, because this is not identical to the properties that are next door. They're not apartments. They are all commercial use buildings that are walkable to the residents in the neighborhood. The stretch for apartments here is exactly to your point. They're trying to piggyback off of the density and the success of downtown Bayshore and put apartments in what is a AA residential neighborhood in Lawrence Farms, and devalue AAA zoned neighborhoods in Okanee by having these 2nd and 3rd story apartments staring into my backyard. So I would really think that this request, quite frankly, by the applicant is a gratuitous use economically. And certainly they know it because they need this zoning change to do it. I don't know how in this day and age that reasonable retail or a medical office couldn't be made profitable at a site like this, especially given the planning board's, frankly, willingness to work with them and find, and staff's ability over the years to try and find some good uses for this property. But I think the application as presented does not fit with the character of the neighborhood. I think it's an invasion of privacy for multiple homes. I think it's gratuitous economically. And frankly, I think it's disingenuous to say that they need this.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. I'm going to go to Richard Cheek. Mr. Cheek.
Hello?
Hello. Go ahead.
Hey,
Mr.
how's it
Cheek.
going? Thank you. Thanks for plopping me in here. I think the other residents aired out the concerns very well. Again, I'm a resident of Seafield Lane. When I heard 54 parking spaces down the block for me, I frankly became pretty upset having small kid running down the block on blocks that are already used as cut-throughs. Not to mention a building that close to the street is going to create another pretty tremendous blind spot, which the building to the east already is. Creates a pretty dangerous merge onto Montauk Highway there. So yeah, those are kind of the major concerns with that, along with, you know, staring at another 35 square foot apartment, 35-foot tall apartment building on our block. You know, it doesn't really bode well for the image of the neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, gentleman speaking before me articulated my concerns much better than I could. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cheek. I'm going to go to Anthony Sezkowski. You're in the room. If you want to go ahead and unmute, you can speak.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So I would like to clear for the record, Mr. Gardino, that there were only two proposals that were brought to this site within the past 20 years. The two proposals were, one, a Hess gas station, which was with a 24-hour convenience store that had, I believe, like 6 islands. And the second proposal that was brought to the community was a 24-hour Bola gas station, similar to the Hess, with a convenience store and I believe like 5 or 6 islands for gas pumps. So those were the only two proposals that were brought to the community that the community had information about. The other proposals that he mentioned, a bank, Starbucks, mechanic building or something, they never came to fruition to the community. So we did not have knowledge of that. So I don't want to be associated with that. The community rejected all these other projects. There were only two projects that were brought to the community. Now, in asking for a change of zone for this, so that right-of-way that is 10.5-foot wide strip that runs at the north end of that property, that is zoned residential B, and that acts as a buffer from the present B1 zone property to the adjacent neighbors. In granting a relaxation of that right-of-way from B1 to business district, that therefore brings the buffer zone closer to the adjacent homes that are just north of that, especially the brick house that's there, and the on the, I believe it was on Sunset, and the other home that's on Seafield. So it reduces that buffer by 10.5 feet, as you can see on that presented site plan. So I believe both zones, B1 and business district, I believe in terms of the height of the structure, I think they both allow 35 feet. So whether it's business 1 or business district. Now, the uses that he can put in a business 1 zone are similar to the uses that he can put in a business district. The only difference between the two is that he is allowed in business district to create a more of a dense project. So in business district, he's allowed to have a 60% FAR for the structure versus 40% in business one that is present now. So therefore, he's creating much denser structure, which therefore requires more parking. So now that, that density will bring more parking issues to an area that is already suffocated with parking. I don't know if you're familiar with, but many of the parking spots from the diner, they park along Sunset and they park along West Main Street right in front of that property, which makes it very difficult to pull out of either on Sunset or Seafield. And then on the east side of that property, along Seafield, I think he rents out parking for the building that he owns on the corner. I believe it's the corner of Seafield and Main Street. So there's about, like, every day if you go by there, there's about like 20, 25 cars parked on that property at the present time. And also they spill out onto the street of Seafield. They block the sidewalk. You can't walk by. And there's no regulation as to how the cars are parked on the property. They're just parked everywhere, sticking out into the streets. So I think by increasing the density will bring more congestion to a very congested area as it is now.
Thank you for your comments. I'm just going to ask you to wrap up since we have other speakers.
I think that would be my extent of my comment. And I do agree with the comments that Mr. Stringer had said earlier, which also applied to the site by changing the zone to a business district.
Thank you.
That would be it. Thank you.
What's it? Andrea Lamore.
They don't have to do that.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I really have nothing further to add. All the gentlemen who went before me, they have expressed both my sentiments and my concerns. And so I really don't have anything further to add, but thank you very much for covering everything so thoroughly.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go to Bridget Borland.
Hello, yes. Thank you so much, and thanks for your service, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a lifelong Lawrence Farm resident, and I have, heard the other proposals back to, 15 years plus with the Hess station. We've had great concerns in this area. The thing that hasn't been mentioned, so I really appreciate all the comments. I'm even more concerned now that I hear what's going to be done with it. The height really concerns me. The fact that there's the cut-throughs are on our streets of Sunset and Seafield, that's very concerning. The fact that it's going to be apartments means that the residents of those apartments will always be coming to park there, which is very different from the business where the billiards and all of those are that get maybe a handful of cars parked in front of them. Maybe the karate place has one class that's kind of crowded, but this would be much different. Plus the 4 extra spots for their visitors, those are going to spill down the street. But my big concern, something that hasn't been mentioned, is that the public library, the Bayshore Brightwaters Library, is across the street. And also the Bayshore schools have their late bus stop that I know of for the high school late bus, and I believe the middle school. So it may also impact some of the elementary schools in Bayshore, let off across Main Street. So they're let off on, I guess I'm not good with my directions here, but the library across, I guess, West Main Street, and the kids have to cross over. They're supposed to cross, where the crosswalk is, and then walk back past the Forum Diner and come into our neighborhood. So now we are adding additional potential kids that would be living in that apartment that would also need to cross. So I'd love to see a crossing guard, but that might be another battle. But then there are the resident kids that go over to study at the library that, we should be able to let walk down our streets. And I really appreciate all the comments about how hard it is to see the traffic. This is an accident waiting to happen. So for those reasons, very opposed to this. Not to mention, it goes on and on. I did send an email, so you can find all my other concerns in the email, but I just reiterate what everybody else has been saying. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Go to Cassandra Usolello.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm currently a resident of Lawrence Farms, and I strongly oppose this proposal. The community members who spoke earlier covered my concerns, which are additional traffic and overpopulating the area. I recently went on a walk with my 10-month-old son, actually, up Cooper Lane and down Seafield and Sunset. And it was about 5 p.m. in the evening, and there was a lot of traffic coming down Seafield Lane. Many people returning, home after the workday. And my concern is with a 54-car parking lot that would just, continue to increase the congestion and the traffic in the area. And there are many young children that reside in the community. And, I am strongly in favor of keeping the community safe. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Dan Mayotte.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, I live at 13 Seafield Lane. I'm opposed of the project. I think it's not appropriate for the neighborhood. There's no 3-story buildings on the western part of Montauk Highway. And I live directly across the street on Seafield Lane behind the current landlord's buildings. And he hasn't been a great landlord. I've been here for 20 years now. He hasn't been respectful. He hasn't been good in that respect. So I don't anticipate it going in any other direction than what it has in the past. The parking right now, again, is a big issue. They park in front of my house on a daily basis, even though there are no parking signs. And on any given night, there's 20 to 25 cars on Seafield Lane in particular. And where are those cars going to go? That's a major, major concern of mine. It's very dangerous to come out of that block and make a left-hand turn. And most of the people now are making a right-hand turn, which is increasing the traffic on Seafield Lane to avoid that intersection. And it's common knowledge. Everybody knows that intersection is very bad. There's a dip in Montauk Highway a little bit further east, so you can barely see any of the cars coming from the east when you're going onto Montauk Highway, as is. All the other people that spoke, I feel, said exactly how I feel, so I'm not going to reiterate that. But I appreciate your time, and I hope you really consider that the moratorium on apartments in Bay Shore, it's a serious issue. It's a serious issue with the school district, and it's just going to get worse when these places get filled up. We have no idea what this town is going to turn into.
Thank you. Go to Mr. Preston, David Preston. Mr. Preston, you're in the room. If you want to unmute, you can go ahead and speak. Mr. Preston. While we're waiting for Mr. Preston to unmute, I'm going to also call in, is it John Paul Lamoth?
Yep.
Yes, go right ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the time. Resident of Okanee. I actually live directly next to my neighbor, Tom Stringer. As he mentioned so eloquently, I strongly oppose this as well. Major concerns with traffic. Mr. Guardino, it kind of, it's like a false plan of having a retail space, but when in actuality it's 15% retail, commercial, and apartments. And as everyone said previously, the amount of apartments that are going up in Bay Shore is pretty crazy right now. And I think his response to your initial question was, well, this isn't downtown Bayshore. I mean, what is it, like a 1/10 of a mile difference? So I don't think that kind of rebuttal really holds any weight. But and then he kept on mentioning the block next to this proposed site, and that's actually only 2 stories. So this is 3 stories. So there really isn't any comparison with that block of storefronts. So just wanted to voice my opposition to this, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Lisa. Is it D'Elia or D'Elia?
Hi.
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Lisa Delia. I am 13 Sunset Road, so I'm just 1 north of Mr. Preston and 2 north of the proposed space. Everything that Tom said and all of my neighbors said, they said perfectly. I want to agree with them 100%. The issue that I just wanted to bring up, someone else already did, just about the children in the neighborhood and the amount of traffic we already have. It is dangerous running out to go catch the bus in the morning, coming off the bus. It prohibits them from playing in their neighborhood on their front lawns. Adding more cars and adding the entrance and egress from Sunset and Seafield. I know that is safer for people coming in and out from Main Street, but it does increase the traffic a lot on 2 narrow roads, especially when people park in front of those houses. It creates people weaving in and out. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mary Louise Cohen.
Did a great job.
Great.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, my name is Mary Louise Cohen. I live on 17 Garner Lane over in Okanee, and I'm on the board of directors for Okanee Association. And I have been through all of these long proposals for the 2, and thank you for Tony Shakowski actually clarifying there was only 2 proposals that actually got to the community. I appreciate that you brought up the idea of putting a moratorium on apartments in Bayshore. I chaired the Bayshore Brightwater Summit Council. We have supported development for a long time in Bayshore, but right now there are so many apartments that have been approved that are not even built yet. And I think we need to hold the line right now until we see how we absorb all these additional apartments and then go from there. We've got 450 going up right in the middle of town. So, and I consider us in Okanee living in downtown Bayshore, and this is covered under the Bayshore Downtown Development anyway. So anyway, I just think that it's just a hard no for me, although I would love to see something positive go in this particular lot. I thank the town and the fire department for getting that building taken down. So at least it's not as bad, but now it's time for the developer to actually listen to the community and to try to find something that's going to fit appropriately for this space. But thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Robert Mason.
Hello, can you hear
You're
me?
live. Yes, go ahead.
First of all, I want to commend Mr. Friedland and also Mr. Stringer. I can't add too much more, except I strongly, and most of our neighbors strongly oppose anything that tries to circumvent the apartment moratorium. We've been here for 40 years, and we've seen Bayshore change an awful lot. And as Ms. Cohen said too, I think that we have to give this a little bit of time and space to see if Bayshore can really absorb all of this. There's an awful lot going on. And this is, as the other gentleman mentioned, this is right in the Bayshore area too. It's a bunch of baloney to say that it isn't. It is. Most residents would be very, very upset to see this go through in its current form, which would include more apartments, very high than anything else right around their building. And I also, from my neighbor's standpoint, I'm worried about traffic buildup for the kids and all the other things. There's got to be another use, but this is a very poor one. And I hope that your board shuts it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Preston, were you able to get your mic to unmute? I still have you in here. I don't see so. So I'm going to go to Sabrina Retaliata. Ms. Retaliata, you're in the room. Just unmute. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sabrina Vittoria. I'm the president of the Oconee Association. I'm speaking on behalf of the Oconee Board of Directors. We would all like to see this parcel appropriately developed. However, we are adamantly opposed to the change of zone for all of the aforementioned reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Shannon Galfano. I'm sorry, did we already? Galfano, go ahead.
Yes, I'm here. I am a resident of 8 Seafield, which is the house directly behind the first house on Seafield that would be affected by this. Obviously, we are in agreement with all of the reasonings, and especially Mr. Stringer. I think he articulated everything that I would like to say, but definitely just the fact that this building would be 35 feet tall, we feel that that would be extremely invasive, especially to our privacy. And the fact that we have so many apartments being built in this town, it's really unnecessary and really wouldn't be a benefit to the town to have more apartments, considering the construction of the other ones have not even been completed. Again, as Dan Maya, my neighbor, stated earlier, we already have issues with cars parking down our street, and issues with the landlord at the other location. So I just am strongly opposed to this plan, and I think everybody else obviously is in agreement with that as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Taylor Brownyard. You're in the room. Just go ahead and unmute. There you go.
I'm sorry. Hi. Yes, this is Taylor Brownyard. I'm 26 Seafield. I don't have anything to add that hasn't already been stated, but I oppose this and hope that something in the future can come to fruition that is a little bit more in line, like everybody said, with the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Colette Coyne.
Go ahead. Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I live on Sunset. I'm quite close to this. I'm only 2 houses up from the diner, and I own a commercial property in the strip that was being spoken about, east of Seafield. And I for 20 years, we've had to deal with this property, and was adamantly against both gas station proposals. But what I want to say is that I appreciate that something completely different is being proposed. And I think that we really need to consider the scale of it all, as well as the nature of it. And, if the property owner could come to us with something that is of a scale that can be handled by the neighborhood, especially concerning traffic, I think that the neighborhood would be open to it, because obviously this guy does have the right to develop his property. He tried to shove a lot of really bad things down our throats for the last 20 years, and we fought it successfully, at least so far. So what I would like to say, I would like to see them come back to us. Obviously, the rest of the neighborhood is really opposed, and I would like to see them come back to us with something that really is acceptable. And traffic is a real concern, and not only because of the traffic itself, but because the parking restrictions are not enforced on Sunset where I live, and I believe they are not enforced on Seafield as well. We also have a very, very bad, as mentioned by a number of people, the turning, Sunset has a little bit more visibility when you're pulling out than Seafield. If I lived on Seafield, I would never make a left-hand turn from, and because of the way, the topography, goes down. And so, I think that when something is brought to the neighborhood that, is more acceptable, it has to include a consideration about, one, enforcing the parking restrictions with no parking right up to Montauk Highway, because you will see at the diner, there's no parking between Montauk Highway and north in the end of my house, and I'm the second house on the west side. Right. And people park there all the time, right under the no parking zone. And for many, many years, I called the cops. They refused to write tickets. They refused to even go into the diner and tell people, move your car. This went on for years and years. And, I grew older and became just unwilling to fight this anymore. So I think that we need to think about possibly a light, possibly at Lawrence Lane, to slow the traffic for whatever development does go in here, and a development that's at a smaller scale than is being proposed right now. And again, I say to the owner of this property, I'm not objecting to anything you come to us with. It just has to be something that is acceptable to the neighborhood and comes in. It is aligned with traffic solutions that will control the traffic and the parking, and that the parking restrictions be enforced by the Suffolk County Police.
Thank you. And Ms. Coyne, please call the planning department on Monday. They can give you the phone number for code enforcement from the town of Islip, and they might have somebody respond a lot quicker than the PD for parking.
I've lived there for 31 years, and I've tried for 31 years. So
I will bring it to their attention and make sure they get you that number as well, though.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Cheryl Ann Rooney.
Hi, it's actually Sean Rooney.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for taking the question. So I live at 46 West Lane and have for the last 20 years. Okay. To say that this would be appropriate for this particular section of town, whether it is considered part of downtown or part or close to Brightwaters, would be incorrect. Most of the houses in this area, both in South Brightwaters and in Oakney and in Lawrence Farms, go back as far as the 20s. This is not appropriate, period. Okay, it would not fit the neighborhood considering the number of apartment buildings that are being built or completed as we speak. Second, to echo just about everybody on this call's comments regarding traffic, and specifically the building next door that has overflow parking on the existing property where that building is currently situated on your drawings. Roughly 25 or so cars are parked there every single day. The building next door has absolutely no parking except for street parking, which overflows into the empty lot along the street, which makes navigating the particular streets, making a left on Sunset, a left or right out of Seafield, or making a left out of Lawrence Lane, virtually impossible on a busy Friday afternoon. So to add 54 spaces, which will be brought down to, let's say, 45, given the description in the outline, with however many apartments, plus the 25 overflow that would begin using that lot, there would be zero parking. And the overflow from the diner would also flow into that particular space. So I struggle to understand how this would be relevant, benefit the neighborhood, or be appropriate in AA or AAA zoning, and be 35 feet tall when the closest building dates back 100 years for the most part and is inappropriately spaced given the neighborhood. Okay, the lack of sidewalks, the fact that this, okay, would only congest an area that literally is at a breaking point currently, seems to be poorly constructed. Thank you.
Thank you. People who have not spoken yet. Ivan? Ivan, I'm not sure if there are two microphones or two speakers on in your place.
Forget it.
Yeah.
It's okay. I see my side. Hello?
Hello?
I can't.
There's either two speakers or two microphones on, and where you are right now, it's not going to work. Mr. Preston, were you able to get your microphone to work? Mr. Preston? There you go. You're on now.
Oh, it's not Mr. Preston, it's Mrs. Preston, sorry.
Oh.
But I just want to say thank you for hearing all the concerns tonight, and also my concerns have already been addressed. So I don't want to take up anybody else's time. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. I see Maureen, is it McCune Simone?
Yes, hi. I just want to make a quick point. I live on Lanier Lane, so we have enough problems with Newens and the new Bola gas station that is now on our corner. However, I wanted to point out that all the new apartment buildings that were built on Mechanicsville by the church and so forth, they're all parking their cars on the main front street. They are not using their parking lots that are in the back. So we might want to think that this apartment building doesn't seem to have a back door for the parking garage, for the parking lot. It seems to only have a front door, but I don't understand the graphics there. The map is so small. But if they're all parking on Seafield and Sunset and West Main Street, we're going to have, it's going to cause major traffic, and it's also dangerous because we won't be able to see when we're trying to make lefts and rights out of Seafield and Sunset. So I agree with everything that was said. I really hope this doesn't go through. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe, unless Ivan got his microphone to work, if there's somebody else I did not call upon that wants to be heard, I see we have Nick Santamartino.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you for taking me here. I just wanted to echo very briefly and bring up one or two other small points. First of all, the moratorium I think is a great idea until we see what happens with the rest of the apartments that are being built. Number two, I live on Seafield. I'm at 37 Seafield Lane, and you cannot make a left or almost a right out of if you head south on Main Street because people are parking everywhere down in the lower right-hand corner of that building. And so of that drawing. And so if you add more apartments, obviously that's just going to lead to more people parking there. I can tell you that on the eastern side of Seafield Lane, right at that corner of Main Street, there is a white, do not park here painted onto the ground. And as we were talking before about that Starbucks, people are going to do what they want to do. And so people park there all the time anyway. So you cannot make a left out of there because you can't see. And now that building, the proposed building, is so close, you probably can't make a right out of there. So I think that's a really bad idea, obviously, for all the traffic. Obviously, Sunset is a raceway. People are speeding down there all the time. I've been on this street since 2013. I noticed that there's been more and more traffic on Seafield. And the last two very quick points I just wanted to raise was people are saying that the building to the right on the eastern side here is a two-story building. That's not true. I counted about 10 stores there. Only about 4 of them have a second story. So this is not an entire, that entire to the right of this picture between Seafield and Hemlock, that row of stores is not entirely a two-story building. I think there's maybe 4 of the 10 have it. I could be wrong. I could be off. It could be 3. It could be 5. But certainly more than half is only 1 story. So it's not like this is just building upon what's already there. And the last thing I would just say, and this, I didn't think of this until Mr. Lembo actually brought it up. I remember when Bola tried to come here a couple of years ago, and truth be told, I was against that. But their proposal did allow for a curb cut onto Main Street. And when Mr. Lembo was speaking before, he made a point of saying that the DOT was very much against a curb cut onto Main Street. I'm not a planner, but I would suggest that the only reasonable explanation for the DOT stance was they don't want the extra traffic onto Main Street. So if they can't get onto Main Street, where is that going to leave the extra traffic? That's easy. It's Sunset and it's Seafield, and it's 54 spots plus whoever visiting is coming there, going up and down those streets. Obviously, if you cannot tell already, I'm against this project, but I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? Please raise your hand. I have Virginia Bromberg. Did I lose Miss Bromberg? I'm going to go to Barney Riley. Barney Riley.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
My name is Riley. I live in Lawrence Farms, and I've lived in Bayshore all my life. One of the speakers made a very good point. You know, I'd like to go one step further and call on the town to work with this developer and New York State DOT to really work on getting this curb cut issue on Main Street approved for this site. For the whole life of this property, prior to this owner, there was multiple exits and entrances off of Montauk Highway. That has been the crux of many of the problems with this site, and is going to continue to be a crux of the problems with this site with the residents. So I would really call on the town to get together with this developer and New York State and use some of and get the approval for cuts onto Main Street. I don't see why the state is doing that. Every other adjacent property that, you know, has exiting from their property onto Main Street already has it. The properties you mentioned across the street all have exiting onto Main Street, and the state's really kind of participating in causing problems on this site. And that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Chris LaGrange.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, okay, so I applaud the town for raising the property to begin with, because since I moved into this neighborhood, I've been here about 8 years. I appreciate that was done. As a career renter until I bought a home, this is my second home now in Lawrence Farms, I live at 32 Seafield. I understand the need for affordable rentals, especially if we're trying to keep our kids here from moving away because the cost of living on Long Island is so expensive. Curb cutting on the Main Street, you know, that's beyond my pay grade. The engineers know better, but I believe that that's like a common consensus with those of us who are afraid of progress in this neighborhood, for that to be something that we're hoping that the planning board can ask the DOT to really look into. A traffic light would help. The beer distributor, the future beer distributor, which is going to be owned by the liquor store on Seafield, it creates a lot of problems. When my kids start driving, they're never to go down and make a left or a right onto Main from Seafield. They're always to go north. But fear of the unknown is not what I'm against. So in a weird way, I'm against what my neighbors are saying, and I approve this project with those with you looking into curb cutting, a traffic light. We need some form of progress, folks. People got to live somewhere, and referencing the 1920s as a good gold standard is not a good gold standard nowadays. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Virginia Bromberg.
Okay, good. Are you, can you hear me now?
Yes, go right ahead.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. I've lived on Lawrence Lane all of my life. My parents bought this house in 1947. This is a beautiful neighborhood. people move here because it's peaceful, it's beautiful, it's lovely. This structure that Mr. Guardino is proposing is just not appropriate here. Go to the mall on the other side of town where they have buildings and commercial things. To build something 3 stories and right up on the front of the street is just not appropriate. I just feel that Mr. Guardino, I have a feeling he might even try to adjust it to not have as many apartments so that he can get approved, which I would not like. I would love to see something that is the other structures, which are like Mr. Shikalski's business, the liquor store. They're small, very nice little structures. And I think that would be appropriate here. And also the traffic, again, like everyone else says, is a very big concern. We have a lot of children in the neighborhood, and I feel that many accidents could happen. And again, there's no room for it. But yes, we would like a lovely structure here, but not what Mr. Guardino is proposing. It's too close to the street. It's 3 stories high. It's not appropriate for this area, which is a beautiful residential area. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no one else with their hand up. Ivan, I believe your microphone was working. I think I heard you there for a second. So why don't we give Ivan the opportunity and then we'll go to the staff report. Ivan, you want to try it now?
Hello?
There you go. It's working. Go right ahead.
Okay, yes. I just wanted to say, everybody spoke so eloquently. I'm in agreement with everybody who opposed this project. I've lived in this neighborhood for 23 years. I was behind Tony Shikalski and other people who have spearheaded the non-approval of the prior 2 proposals of the Hess station in Ebola. It would also create another lighting pollution on the neighborhood. And as mentioned before, all the traffic issues, there's been multiple accidents already of people egressing Seafield onto Montauk Highway. That's just gonna increase, multiply. There is, like everybody mentioned, an overflow of parked vehicles on the street, on Montauk Highway, along the fence now, that obstruct the views, leaving Sunset, leaving Seafield, and having all these cars egressing and probably causing more traffic and more people driving at probably over the speed limit on Sunset and Seafield is not a favorable situation for the neighborhood. Plus a 35-foot story, 3-story building there is not going to be easy to navigate and travel onto the street. Plus it's going to create a lot of issues, as I've mentioned before. So I'm in agreement. I oppose this project, and we hope that it doesn't get developed. And if the Guardino or the current developer wants to put something else on there, like I said, medical office is something that's closed at night and more of an appeal, we are welcome to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else with their hand raised in the room, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stated by the applicant, this application proposes a mixed-use building on a vacant lot west of downtown Bayshore. Prior to this, the property has been the subject of various land use applications since the mid-1990s, including 2 applications for a gas station with convenience store and a solo bank with a drive-through. All of those applications were ultimately withdrawn or precluded by the Zoning Board of Appeals due to the proposed gas stations being within 200 feet of the Bayshore Brightwaters Library. The business district is located near this location as it extends across the street on Seafield, where there are various commercial uses. The conceptual site plan presented by the applicant shows about 16% landscaping and 4 additional parking stalls than is required by code. The site otherwise complies with the requirements of the business district zoning. Given the mix of uses and the excess parking, should the mixed use proposal move forward, the board could consider land banking additional parking stalls if we feel that parking can be adequately contained amongst the various uses there. But obviously we heard a lot of comments from the public tonight, so the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision to review them with the applicant and address them as best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Colgan. Mr. Guardino, I will go to you. I think most of the issues raised were similar to what I raised, but there were some other newer points that were raised. I don't know if you want to address any of them or speak further on the application.
Yeah, I would just like to speak. I'm not sure I'm going to address the points. I have just some commentary. First of all, I do want to point out that in the B1, your question about what is the height in the B1 district, it is actually 35 feet. So the building height that everyone is objecting to is actually permitted as of right in this district, as well as the BD district. I want to thank Sean for correcting what was said by some of the residents who accused me of being disingenuous about the number of applications that were made. I know some people said there were only 2. They only remember the Hess and they remember the Bola. They don't remember the 7-Eleven. And again, I'm not here to push back with people, but when people question my integrity, I know there were at least 3 that went to boards and were withdrawn, as Mr. Colburn pointed out. But there were others that were actually killed by the town, and I made that clear. It wasn't just the number that went to the community; it was both either the community and the town. I heard tonight. I mean, I heard a lot of commentary about the neighbors they want something that's appropriate. I don't believe that for a minute. I'm sorry, I heard irrational comments. I heard, and think about what people said. There were some people who said they don't want a 54 car parking lot. They don't want a use that has more parking because that creates traffic in the neighborhood, because now they'll bring traffic. I heard their neighbors say, I don't want the building like the one next door across Seafield because that has no parking and that brings traffic to the neighborhood. You can't have it both ways. This is just, it's just not rational, the comments. The questioning about whether I was equating what we're proposing to what is next door in BD. I know what's next door. I know that those buildings are mostly single story, but they are also 2-story, and that's what I represented. I never said these buildings were the same. I was just trying to draw the comparison to the BD zoning. And I remind people that in that BD zoning, this very use is permitted as of right in that district. So what they're complaining about on the west side of Seafield could absolutely be built as of right on the east side of Seafield. So this is not an inappropriate use for this community, in my opinion, because the zoning allows it. And I would also point out that the town board, they amended this code in 2017, 3-4 years ago. This wasn't like from the 20 years ago. This was just a couple of years ago. The town board saw fit to include mixed use commercial residential uses in the BD district, which is right there in the neighborhood. So I don't think this is a wildly inappropriate use. I think it's actually an appropriate use, as the board found. And then finally, I would just ask, or 2 things. I would ask, I know we heard about a moratorium, Mr. Chairman. Is that a de facto moratorium, or is there actually a moratorium?
There is no, Mr. Gordon, I'll answer. I mean, I think I said at the beginning, there is no, that's my opinion. There are 6 other board members. From where I stand, I've made it clear at previous meetings that I support a moratorium, will not support any apartments in downtown Bayshore. The board obviously all speaks for themselves. And I tried to clarify that at the beginning. There are 6 other members.
Right. Okay. And then just my final point, that we heard a lot about, people complaining about the curb cuts being on Seafield and Sunset. And I listen, I understand their concerns, but the Montauk Highway is a state highway. The DOT has said they don't want to have a curb cut on Montauk Highway. So they want the entrances and exits to go out onto the side streets. Again, I can't question their wisdom. They're the traffic people. But I would point out, and I think this is important for the board and also for the community, we would like the curb cut to be on Montauk Highway. I understand where the neighbors are coming from about having the curb cuts on the side streets. We have asked the town multiple times for a letter of support so that we could take it to the DOT, because the DOT said, look, if the town is supportive of a curb cut on Montauk, we will reconsider our position. We can't get that from the town. So we're caught in the middle. And, leaving us really with very little options. As I said from the beginning, this site has inherent challenges because of its depth or lack of depth. It also has challenges with respect to ingress and egress, and any assistance that the town could give us to try to get that curb cut on Montauk Highway, I think would alleviate at least some of the concerns, or at least the traffic concerns that some of the residents have. And that's basically my comments. I don't have anything further. And I'm happy to work with the town if there's anything here to work, to work on. We heard the community loud and clear. Again, I just don't know what's left. People are saying, we would like to see an appropriate use. We'd be happy to meet with the community. I would be very interested to see what they think is appropriate use here.
Thank you, Mr. Guardino. I would just say that you appear before this board often. I never, through any of the comments, question your integrity. I obviously wasn't here to know how many applications were put before it to correct any of that, but Mr. Colgan was able to. And you've always been an upstanding counselor and worked with this board numerous times. So thank you for that. I'd also state for the record, and happy to take it from the minutes or give you a letter of support. I understand the concerns of pushing resident parking down those streets, and I would support you in any way, shape, or form as the chair of the board, not as anyone else but the chair of the board. Some way I don't support apartments downtown. I would support you in a letter or whatever you needed to say that state DOT should consider allowing you to put a access point on Montauk Highway versus using those two side streets, which I think would alleviate a lot of the concerns of the community. And as you know, and I'm going to turn it to the rest of the board, I'm happy to work with you and the applicant and the community to see if there's something that can be put there that works as best as can for everyone. With that being said, I will turn to other board members. Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to the residents for all their input tonight, and Mr. Guarino for a nice presentation. But I would concur with my chairman as on the onset of the meeting tonight in reference to, the 3 stories, what exactly, maybe Sean can answer this, or Mr. Guarino, what portion of the property is business one, percentage-wise?
Probably 95%. It's everything. If you look at what's on the screen now, only the strip that's on the north end there, you see that where you don't see any shrubs, that 10-foot strip
Would be the resident B.
That's resident.
Actually, Anthony?
Yes.
Anthony, excuse me for one moment.
Sure.
I actually believe the dash, it's hard to tell on the town zoning map, but based on what my survey has said, the dashed line running down the center of the right of way on the north side is actually the zoning line. So it's really only the 5 foot or 5'3" northern portion of that easement is what's residential as far as my survey could tell me. Everything south of that dashed line in the center of the easement is business one.
Okay, so basically we're looking at a business one piece of property. Even with the height in business one, what it would be is the same as the 3 stories, but I don't think it allows 3 stories. I do believe it only allows 2 stories.
It doesn't
And
say.
I am against right now putting more apartments in Bay Shore also. I would love to see this piece developed with something, and this board would be willing to work with you on anything. And as the chairman also said, he'd be willing to meet with you to discuss other ideas if my other colleagues don't feel that this is an appropriate application. At this point, I would love to see some. I have the fortunate, I've been fortunate enough to be here for those 2 applications going back. I've been on the board for, I think this is my 15th year. So there's nothing more I'd like to see before my term is up to have this piece developed. But I just don't think that this might be the right project for it.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from the board?
Chairman, if I could. Yeah.
Is that Mr. Moriarty? I can only see a few on the top. Mr. Moriarty?
That is me. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to go back to the point I think that the chairman made, and it's been clear that there is no form.
Mr. Moriarty, can you just speak a little louder? I don't know if it's just on my end, but I can't hear you too well.
Is this any better?
So a little better.
Okay. just to underscore the point that the chairman had made, there really is no formal moratorium in place, but we do have to, I think in many of the recent applications that were approved in downtown Bayshore, there were clear statements made that, we really need to take a pause here and see how these apartments are going to be absorbed. And there's really been a concern at the board level, I think in the community as well, that, we've got over 1,000 new apartments going online in the next probably 2 to 3 years. And the sense is that, we really want to make sure that those apartments are absorbed properly, that the community, that we have sufficient occupancy levels, we don't have vacancy issues in these communities, in these particular new buildings especially. And I view the project as basically an apartment. I mean, if you look at it, it really is an apartment building. And I think that's what's causing some concern at the board level here. If it can be reworked in a way that makes it more of a business use in the building, as opposed to 85% of it's going to be a studio and single bedroom apartments. It sounds like an apartment building, and I think that's the concern that we're having, seeing an application like this, and the concern that sort of triggering this this issue with respect to additional apartments in Bayshore. So I just wanted to sort of make that point clear.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. Anything further from the board? Not hearing anything. Anything further from either Mr. Guardino or from Mr. Colvin?
Thank you.
Not sure. Is there a motion? Mr. Guardino, I say good, Mr. Brown or Mr. Moriarty?
I'm happy to make a motion. I think obvious. Can you hear me?
Yes, just speak a little louder. We can hear you.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing this evening and reserve decision. Obviously, I think there's a number of concerns that have been raised by the community and board members as well. Give the applicant a chance to come back and respond to those issues and reserve any decisions.
It's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second to that motion? A second by Mr. Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I would just note I am opposed to that motion. I would not support this application with the apartments in it, and I think anything else would be a substantial change, and you could come back with a new application. So I'd be opposed to reserving. So we are reserved, and that concludes this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thank you. While I was doing that, I wrote on every single, here we go. Okay. Planning board application decision item, Park Row Homeowners Association, Inc., PB 2022-003, south side of Clubhouse Circle, 200 feet south of Northwood Boulevard, Central Islip, 7-12 Clubhouse Circle. Applicant requests a planning board determination if vinyl siding constitutes an in-kind replacement of existing masonite siding. If vinyl siding is not considered an in-kind replacement, applicant requests approval to use vinyl siding as an exterior finish material required by TC 4276. Is the applicant here? Are we going right for a staff report? See the applicants in the room? If the applicant wants to unmute, you can go ahead and make your presentation. Sure, if the applicant is having.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
It's Wendy. I'm not sure he was speaking tonight, but he
Okay,
looks like he just understood now.
So why don't I go right to Ms.
hi.
Wozniak? Oh, okay. The applicant,
Yeah,
did you want to be heard?
I could certainly speak for a moment, sure.
Go ahead.
Our major concern or our point with this is the masonite that is there now is a kind of discontinued item. So we are looking to replace with the vinyl siding as the siding now on the buildings are starting to deteriorate.
Do you or the app or Ms. Wozniak have the elevations that you can put up on the screen for the board members as the presentation and staff reports being made?
I believe Kelly does, yes.
I have them, but they're not downloading. I'm really sorry. Of course, my computer's not working right now. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's my internet here, but I mean, I could try to pull up maybe Google Maps of the area if that helps. I'm really sorry. It just keeps saying downloading and then nothing's popping up.
Okay.
You want me to go to my report or try to?
Why don't you do
open-
your report and see if we can get something open? It's gonna be hard to make a decision without seeing it.
Yeah. Or maybe I could download it from the town website too. Try that as well. I believe it was uploaded. Oh, here we go. Okay, I got it.
Perfect.
It must be my internet's just really slow. All right, let's see. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and here's a closer, a little more zoomed in, but I'll read my staff report in the meantime. The property is located in the Park Row multifamily development in the Central Islip Plan Development District. The development consists of over 500 attached residential dwelling units, which was developed in the late 90s. The existing buildings on site were constructed with masonite siding, which is an engineered wood. The siding is now deteriorating and the applicant is looking to replace it with new vinyl siding. Covenants imposed on the project permits replacement of exterior finish materials in kind without board approval. However, determination is required whether vinyl siding constitutes as an in-kind replacement of the existing masonite siding. In addition, if vinyl is not considered an in-kind replacement, the applicant is requesting approval to use vinyl siding as a finished material. First on this one building, but eventually for all buildings within the development. The proposed material is crane board solid core vinyl lap siding with decorative scallop siding within the gabled areas, as you can see on the elevations here. And I don't believe the color has yet to be selected, but I was told it was going to be a neutral color.
Do we have any recommendation from the planning staff?
Well, typically, when we review elevations, especially in the plan development district, we usually discourage vinyl siding, especially when the building is all vinyl. Usually, sometimes buildings will be, the majority of it's brick, and we do okay vinyl siding, and that's kind of why it's before you guys tonight, because when we got the elevations, we denied it for the vinyl siding. So our recommendation would be use something a little bit more sturdy and a little bit of a higher quality.
And is the applicant given a reason why they cannot do that? Or the applicant's on? Does the applicant want to speak to that? Is there a reason why you cannot use something a little more sturdy?
Sorry about that.
Yep.
We, at the moment, we're looking really, I believe, on a cost basis for this.
So solely based on, what would it cost if you had to replace what you're saying is no longer what's been discontinued, the masonite?
Yeah, we would have to use like a hardy board would be the most similar. And I don't have the numbers immediately on me, but the bid that we had out was about $45,000 difference just on this one building.
Right. I wish Mr. Bruno was here this evening to speak on this, but Ms. Wozniak, I don't know if you or planning staff has an opinion on other options that they can work with that would be more appropriate.
Typically, people do go with the fiber cement. I believe, I'm not an architect, but I do believe there's other types of engineered wood. Obviously, the fiber cement is the cement based. And then I know there are, there's obviously other siding options. But yeah, the more sturdy, durable materials do tend to cost more. And I understand, with the development of over 500 attached homes, that cost could be significant.
I'm only one board member. I'll turn to the other board members. I have certainly nothing in front of me showing a reason to approve it as, and from hearing the staff report, to vinyl. But Mr. Brown?
Yes, I think, Kelly, I remember from when we did our briefing that this is core backed, right? Or foam backed. So this will not cup like the less expensive vinyl siding. And I believe I did sit with Mr. Bruno with the application. And did we have samples that we looked at that you had?
I have material samples, obviously at the office. I would have brought them if this was in person. But I don't know if the applicant can speak to the type, because I know people usually do Certainty. That's kind of like the most common vinyl material. And this is crane board, which I am not familiar with. So maybe
The crane board
why this is
has
a little bit better. Maybe it is a little bit more expensive. I'm really not too sure as far as cost goes.
the crane board is sturdier. It does have a foam back attached to it. So it's not a separate piece with like an insulation on the inside and the vinyl over it. This is vinyl with the foam directly attached to it. So as Mr. Brown had said, it's much less likely to cup.
Yeah, I'm certainly willing to consider if there's a difference there. I just would have hoped for a little more of a presentation to show what you're talking about versus normal vinyl.
Hi, this is Tom Malanga. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association.
Yes.
We were told that this wasn't a public hearing, so I'm sorry that I'm not really prepared to present anything. But one of the driving factors has been, I've lived in Park Row for 14 years, and the material that is on the siding of our homes now has fallen apart. It cannot be power washed. It has been a huge problem and expense for this HOA for years. We've had to reside whole sides of homes. And it's garbage. I mean, if you were to come and take a look at some of this stuff. So all of the surrounding complexes, the Farrell property has vinyl siding. Foxgate has vinyl siding. Islip Landing has vinyl siding. It seems that we picked a very high quality siding to go with, and I'm surprised that it's not considered in kind, only because it's at least as good, if not better, than what we currently have. So it is not really so much a question of the cost. This stuff that we have now doesn't exist anymore. In fact, there was a class action lawsuit in the 90s against the manufacturer that said that it never should have been produced and used in New York State. So, I apologize for not being, I guess, more prepared, but I was told that it was not a public hearing and our architect was presenting. So,
it's definitely not a public hearing. Just having of an idea of what he wanted to put on there. From what Mr. Brown is saying, it is different than, which may be sufficient. I just wish we.
And as far as the colors, we're not looking to change the aesthetic look of Park Row at all. So the colors are going to match. Park Row is, we have white buildings, we have blue buildings, and we have grayish buildings. And our intention is to keep with those colors for each building as close as possible. This particular one is an off-white.
Ms. Wozniak, the neighboring properties that were just cited, what do they have on the outside of their buildings?
Well, like I mentioned, the architectural reviews that I've done recently in the PDD, mostly the majority of the building's brick, and then we do allow the vinyl siding when it's not most of the building. I think some buildings in Park Row, Tom, I don't know if you can quote me if I'm wrong, some of them have brick on them, but this one in particular is just all siding.
The phase 1 units that were built from 1990 to 92 have brick on the bottom portion, yes. This is a phase 3 building, which is interesting because our architect has done 2 surveys of the condition of our siding over the last 7 years. And this particular building has ranked last in both of their surveys. And it's bad, and it's taken us a while to get here. And I'm, I feel bad that, we got to like the 1 yard line, we're ready to go. And then we were told, oh, by the way, you might not be able to use vinyl siding after we already did a bid for this during COVID, which you can imagine it wasn't exactly the ideal time to go out to bid on a project of this magnitude. But the intention is to do this as a pilot project, see how it goes, see how this contractor applies it, and make sure that we like it and that it goes up as smoothly as possible. And R&W has done a good job with these. I guess I don't understand the question about the elevations. We're not changing the elevations of these buildings. They've been there. So this particular building was built in 1996.
Yeah, not looking for the height. We're just looking for what it looks like with the siding on it, just to compare the pictures and the differences.
Yeah, the peaks of this in the front have like a scallop, which is what was mentioned earlier, the highest portions.
Ms. Wozniak, can you speak to Mr. Brown's point, and I guess what you got from Mr. Bruno about the sturdiness of this? Is that, if that's sufficient, then I think I'm okay with it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brown.
Yes. The elevations that I saw, I think originally had brick, and the comments that I went back and forth with Mr. Bruno were that it really, using the vinyl, which was the foam back vinyl, which is much sturdier than the normal vinyl, with the elevations where you had the brick, the building was broke up like in thirds when you're looking at it. So his comment was that, it was a good fit.
I think it's because we pulled up the street view, and on the street view, all you could see are the brick buildings because you can't quite get into the development. So I think that's where you saw the brick. Like he said, there must have been multiple phases.
Further comments from other board members or questions?
Chairman, yeah,
Mr. Moriarty?
it seems to me that the homeowners association is trying to remedy a problem here, and the approach that's being recommended is that this is not the cheap vinyl; it's something of that. So, I given the circumstances and given the fact that apparently a number of the other communities up in that area have vinyl integrated into their buildings as well, it seems to me that I'm generally supportive of it. It seems to me that. I agree. I'd like to maybe actually feel and see the material being used, but in the absence of that, I think I'd be inclined to support the request and allow them to proceed. I just don't think it's good for us to be holding up a project like this, particularly given the fact that they bid the materials, and in COVID, it's a very difficult time to even secure contractors and materials like this. So I wouldn't want to be a reason to hold that up. I don't see a basis based on what I've seen so far.
Mr. Madden,
Kelly, I'm sorry.
Get some opinion. Either Ms. Madden or Mr. Cruz, do you have an opinion on this? You both muted on me. There you go, Ms. Cruz.
I was gonna say I don't have a problem as long as they use the higher end of that vinyl, so that they're able to kind of make it look nicer and sturdier than probably if it's falling apart now. Can they add brick? Was that part of the plan on those buildings, or do they have brick already, or no?
Yes, several of them do the different phases, right? Is what we said.
The phase 1 units have brick, and they also have brick porches. All of the other phases have wood front porches. It's a totally different design. So you wouldn't really be able to add brick to the bottom. Kelly, if you're able to go to Zillow and type in 9 Clubhouse Circle, you'll see a picture of that unit from a year ago when the unit was sold. If you wanted to show folks what a full non-brick townhouse in Park Row looks like.
Kelly, photos, I had sent over photos with this also.
I think we need to get this resolved so that the homeowners can move forward on something here and not drag this out any longer. So Kevin, if you think that Gary was confident based upon the type of product it is.
Yeah,
based on the
I
current
had
elevations.
I had concerns with vinyl originally, and then Gary assured me with the foam backed, it's a totally different product, and it tends not to cup, which is your concern with vinyl.
Right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Ms. Wozniak, are we satisfied with the higher end vinyl?
Yeah, like I said, it's unfortunate because with different contractors and even like different architects, as far as I go, I get very different varying opinions. But if it's the opinion of the board that they're okay with the crane board, with the foam back, and understanding that some of these houses do have brick incorporated into them, then, you can approve it, I guess, on this specific kind that they've noted in here. Not just any vinyl, I guess you'd say.
Correct. Not just any vinyl is the key part of this. I think they're going with the higher end product, which I think.
Right. And even as the applicants noted that he was basing it on, the cost, they weren't going the cheap route by buying the least expensive they could find. They picked a good product.
I mean, for me, cost would not be the sole driving factor, but it sounds like they picked a good product that meets the requirements or as best it can. So as long as Mr. Bruno has stated that's okay, who's our resident architect on this board, who's not here tonight, who would have given us a nice earful. But Mr. Brown spoke to him, and Ms. Wozniak, you're saying you're okay with the higher end one that they have actually are asking for. We can specifically condition this upon that type. Take that as a yes from Ms. Wozniak.
I didn't know that was a question. I thought it was a statement.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you're okay with that, that's my question.
Sure.
Anyone else from the board have any other questions, concerns, comments? Okay. So, Mr. Brown, since you're the expert on this, you probably should make the motion.
Yeah. On behalf of Mr. Bruno, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to grant the application, subject to them using the product that was put forth tonight, which is the foam back vinyl, and a color that's approved by, the planning staff or worked out with the planning staff.
The motion by Mr. Brown to grant the application with the proposed foam back vinyl, which I guess you're calling crane board, Kelly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Crane board.
Solid core vinyl lap siding, to be very specific.
That's the motion. And with the decorated, you said scallop, whatever siding and then the gabled, within the gabled areas, and the color to be worked out with the planning staff. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it's granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6 on the agenda. Major subdivision decision item, Settlers Road subdivision Hop Hog, MS 2007-005, northerly terminus of Settlers Road, 120 feet north of Old Post Road, Hop Hog. Applicant requests a 90-day extension of the final approval on a 10-lot major subdivision. Mr. Gonzalez, this might have been the first thing that I ever heard when I got on this board. We're still talking about this Settlers Road subdivision Hop Hog, but go ahead.
I'm sure it was, and it's hopefully drawing to a close. I'll just read the staff report and provide a little comment afterwards. So this application was last heard on December 2nd, 2021, granted a 90-day extension, which runs until February 20th to fulfill all requirements of the final resolution. The applicant to bring the board back up to speed, as I'm sure we all are very familiar with at this point, was working on a release of the mortgage premises being recorded at the Suffolk County Clerk's Office, as that's required in order for the title company to verify to the town that no mortgages exist on the property and any portions being offered for eventual dedication of easements, which there are a few for this development. There's an easement to the eventual recharge basin that's going to be dedicated to the town, the dedication of the road itself, and of course the recharge basin. So all those areas needed to be vetted first to make sure there was no outstanding mortgages on the property. The applicant actually contacted the town, one of the owners, and they did supply a brief summary that the release has been recorded. They did provide a receipt from the county to my email. We will get a copy of that recording once they get it back from them. And they have also picked up the Mylars, which have now been signed by the health department. After that time, they will need to submit all the necessary bonds and fees for the final resolution before the chairman can sign the final plat and it can be recorded at the county clerk's office. So we are almost there, and hopefully we'll be able to get everything in order for the chairman to sign the maps. So based on the above, staff recommends the board grant the 90-day extension of the final approval from when it expires February 20th, subject to the attached final resolution.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gonzalez? If not, who's making that motion? Mr. Matamore, go ahead. You got to unmute though.
Okay, I'm sorry. I make a motion to close this hearing and or this portion of what we're doing and grant the application subject to everything that Tanner just put on the record.
Motion to grant the application subject to everything Tanner put on the record. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it's approved. Mr. Matamore, I like that. That's a very clever way of not having to worry about the details of your motion.
Thank you. Okay.
That being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Mr. Moriarty, motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we're adjourned. Thank you for being patient this evening. Have a good night. See you all in a, was it the end of the month or next month, actually?
Okay.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everyone.